Mics are on. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's board meeting. It's unusual for us to have a crowd like this at the back, especially a quiet crowd at the back. So I want to welcome. This is a very special night for us, especially in the beginning. So I welcome everyone, and I'm going to ask us all to stand for the singing of O Canada. Before I ask the director to do a roll call, I would like to, on behalf of all of us in Upper Canada, express our concerns and support for our friends north of us who suffered the effects of that terrible tornado. We all count our blessings that we weren't involved, but please know that we are thinking of you and that you have our complete support. Director, could you do a roll call for me, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, trustees. This is our roll call for 26 September 2018. Trustee Armour.
Present.
First Vice Chair Karpner.
Present.
Trustee Cram. Trustee Jacobs.
Present.
Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Present.
Trustee Bill McPherson.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice Chair McDonald.
Present.
Chair McMillan.
Present.
Trustee Richards. Trustee Swan.
Present.
Student Trustee Bushra-Kadra.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have quorum.
Thank you very much, Director. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 3.02 to 3.03, September 26, 2018, and submitted. Moved by Trustee Karpner, seconded by McAllister. And I'll ask you to cast your votes, please.
I'm in favor.
Thank you. And that carries. Thank you very much, everyone. Do we have any conflict of interest declarations? Seeing there are none, we're going to move on to the first item on our agenda, which is special recognition. And I'm going to turn this over to my Vice Chair, Carol Karpner, and she is going to go to the podium and begin this.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to get started by welcoming everyone here tonight. This is our 5th annual Trustee Innovation Award presentation night, and I'm very pleased that we have such a full gallery. It's not a legal limit for the amount of people, but we'll move quickly through this part of the program. Special thanks to the committee that has worked with me this year, Committee of Trustees, John McAllister, Susan Richards, Don Cram, Jeff McMillan, and also Lisa Workman has worked with us to keep us very organized and keeping things in order and just doing what needs to be done for all of us. So thank you, Lisa, and to Mark Calder, who was our photographer outside. And just a message that Mark would like to take a group photo of the winners only after the presentations are finished. So please don't skitter out and go home right away. We'd like one more picture of the winners only. In our budget, we allow for the distribution of awards in 6 categories of our employees, and since there were no nominations from the principal or managers group, we decided that we would present 2 awards in the secondary teacher section, because the two presentations that we chose were so close in the marks that we present and just the way they were presented by the people who nominated them that it was hard to break the tie, so we thought, why not? We have an extra award, we're going to give it to these two people. We had 11 submissions in all, and as I just said, 6 were chosen to receive the award that you have seen earlier, and if you've just arrived, the awards are behind me here on the table. There will be a new nomination form next year. I've heard some comments about the form being really tricky, or we don't understand parts of it, so we're going to put our heads together and create a new form, and we're already working on that. Trustee Richards has provided me with some input, and we'll have another meeting and come up with a new form to put on the website. So hopefully we'll have double or triple the amount of nominations next year for this award. There are many valuable and deserving employees in our board. And over the 5 years, we've presented to some of them, but there's a lot more out there. So we really want to see these awards being given out on a yearly basis. Outside in the hallway, some of you have already noticed that the plaque that we started with that had the spokes coming out from the center is full. So we have another plaque right underneath it where the names of the winners for this year are on that plaque already. So before you leave, check that out. It's just to the right of the water fountain out in the hallway. All right, so I think that is enough talking from me. I would like to get started with the awards. The temperature is rising in this room. I can feel it already. So we're going to hear about our award winners from the people who have nominated them. And the first one to come up tonight is going to be Jane Bain. And I would like her to come forward to present the award to Debbie Banks and Mary Kay McCreevy, who would also, I would like them to come up. And Trustee Swan, I'd like you to come up to present the actual award when Jane is finished speaking. So I'll get out of here and you can have
Good evening, Chair McMillan, Director Sliwa, board members, and innovation winners, and guests. I'm excited to be here tonight to present this, to share with you the inspiring work of Debbie Banks, who is our Principal of Special Education, and Mary Kay McGreevy, who is an intensive support teacher. Over a year ago, Mary Kay had the opportunity to be a guest at a community Tumbling Together program. This program was the result of the brainchild of two women, Cecile Loisel, an occupational therapist, and Jean Chamberlain, a speech-language pathologist. Together, they developed a community-based program which included OTs, SLPs, and mental health workers. This program has been running for about 15 years in the Brockville community and is running today in Brockville and Smith Falls communities under the Tumbling Together Consortium. It is a movement-based, fun program in which professionals work with children and their parents to foster growth in the areas of self-regulation, gross motor, sensory needs, connection, and communication in order to develop a child's readiness to learn. Mary Kay immediately was excited about the program as it was fostering self-regulation of children in an active and fun environment. Self-regulation is a key component of our new kindergarten program and a key to being ready to learn. When a grant or opportunity arose from the Ministry of Education for young children with an autism diagnosis, Mary Kay and Debbie contacted Cecile Loisel, and the three professionals created Kids Gotta Move After School. This program, delivered after school with parents present and involved, was a multi-layered learning opportunity for everyone. The UCDSB version of the already established Kids Gotta Move program expanded to include 10 different professional members: a lead trainer, which was often Cecile, an occupational therapist, a speech-language pathologist, an ABA therapist, an educational assistant, an early childhood educator, a teacher, a speech-language assistant, and a parent partner and principal. These additional lenses, especially the ABA therapist, brought new and varying perspectives to the program. It was held in a school, either in the gym or the Learning Commons at the end of the instructional day, once a week for 8 weeks. The target children were in kindergarten or grade 1 with a diagnosis of autism or developmental delay. It brought parents into the school in a model of working together as partners. Parents stayed and watched their children once a week for 8 weeks. Their experience and knowledge of their child was woven together by the parent partner and staff team to create success for each child. Parents were given the opportunity to learn about self-regulation, co-regulation, along with the KGM staff. It gave staff a chance to learn deeply about setting goals, data collection, data analysis, and report writing. It gave parents, KGM staff, board staff, school staff, and agency staff a chance to review the child's success and plan together the next steps for the child based on data from a written report produced collaboratively at the end of the program. It gave the multidisciplinary staff a chance to have deep discussions, to view the challenges and successes of each child from multiple perspectives, and to learn deeply about the confluence of gross motor skills, sensory needs, communication, and connection skills, and the role they play in self-regulation and being ready to learn. It gave staff a chance to attend a workshop, then practice their skills weekly with a coach, attend a second workshop to clarify, answer burning questions, learn more deeply, and then go back and practice again. This all occurred in a culture of true collaboration. School and community professionals, parents and children working and learning together. Debbie and Mary Kay's vision was unlike anything undertaken in our board before. They worked long hours on their own time, writing the grant, meeting with the ministry auditors, meeting with Cecile, ordering, packing, moving, unpacking, and assembling materials. KGM was delivered in 7 sites west of the 416. They also collected data, collated data, analyzed data, met with parents, and worked with HR to develop new job descriptions. They did a lot of troubleshooting for a myriad of challenges. Not to mention that Mary Kay has been trained as a lead and worked as a teacher in the summer program, and Debbie took over the role as KGM principal during the last session. The result of this hard work was a successful program for children and the creation of a synergy with UCDSB. Anyone who heard of this program wanted to be part of it. They wanted it in their school. They wanted it for their children. Over the year, 25 plus staff members were trained, and 7 community partners. These professionals are now informally sharing and spreading their learning of co-regulation and self-regulation, sharing how to foster it as the linchpin in beginning to be ready to learn. It has also changed the conversation about children who are struggling in kindergarten. This conversation has moved away from the term behavior and towards talking about sensory needs, gross motor, communication, connection, and self-regulation. This program actively creates growth mindsets in children and adults. It supports our staff to roll up their sleeves and dig deep into learning how to help all children acquire self-regulation skills so that they are all prepared for a successful future in learning. This multidisciplinary program, introduced to us by Mary Kay and Debbie, has created a positive change in how many UCDSB kindergarten and grade 1 students are supported to foster self-regulation and positive social interactions. Thank you, Debbie and Mary Kay, for bringing us this amazing program and for being tireless champions of children, staff, and parents.
Thank you, ladies, and well-deserved indeed. Our next presenter is going to be, or presenters, I would ask Angela Sumstrom and Sylvain Lamarand from Rockland Public School to come forward, please, and Jennifer Sims, who is the recipient of our award. She is an EA from Rockland Public. And since I'm her trustee, I will present her with her award.
When I think of Jennifer Sims, I think of a fly. Just kidding. That was last year's speech. When I think of Jennifer Sims, I think of someone that I would definitely want on my team because she makes everyone around her better. Jennifer is always looking for ways to improve, whether it's her approach to a student or a teacher's delivery of a lesson.
This actually reminds me of the many times I worked with Jennifer last year. As a newer teacher, I was still finding ways to meet the needs of all of my students that I taught. This is when I first learned how valuable of an asset Jennifer is to the RKPS team. I would be in the middle of a lesson and I would see Jen all of a sudden turn to the computer or her bag of tricks and she would get started on something. By the time I was finished giving the instructions, she would have created something on the computer, found an interactive website, or made an accommodated version of the exact lesson I was teaching. This was never asked of her, but so greatly appreciated. Through continuous collaboration with Jennifer last year, I began to feel more confident in my own ability to reach each student and meet their needs.
Jennifer does this for each and every teacher or student that she works with. She has a wealth of knowledge and experience that is invaluable in the classroom. In fact, I think you should be paying her double.
Last year, Jennifer also implemented a plan where one of our ASD students would use his phone to message his mom each day to tell her what he had accomplished during the day. This was meant as a transition plan for high school so that this student would have a means to document homework and to teach him the accountability and responsibility to keep track of his own work and permission forms. This year, she has expanded this to several other students.
Jennifer's efforts do not stop in the classroom, however. She's the very definition of crew. At lunchtime and recess, she's a wonder to behold. This year, she's been running Wee Club and Coach's Corner at the same time. In one part of the room, students are busy making posters for our We Scare Hunger food drive, while in another part of the room, students who have difficulty in the yard have a place to hang out and interact in a small group setting. All the while, Jennifer is supporting students, giving advice, and teaching students strategies on how to deal with day-to-day trials.
She has also taken the responsibility for the snack program, where students are involved in distributing the food to each classroom, and does the staff soup club every Thursday during the winter months. Through activities such as We Club, Jennifer teaches students to care as much as she does. In the midst of this flurry of activity, she's always taken the time to ask students and staff alike how their weekend was or if they're feeling better after something has happened.
As you can see, Jennifer does a lot around our school, but what you don't know is that she asks very little in return. It is for this reason that she's such a deserving recipient of this year's Trustees Innovation Award.
I want to get a picture from our former superintendent, Alan.
Who was my principal.
There you go. All right, thank you very much. Our next presenter will be Carrie Cronwall, who's principal of Central Public School. And if you would come forward with your two teachers, Fiona and Justine. And I'd ask Trustee McDonald to come to present the award to these people.
Good evening, everyone. Last year, Central Public School school teachers Justine Gauzel and Fiona Frigo initiated a co-op program for our grade 6 students. They took big ideas like learning skills, experiential learning, character always, and global competencies, and crafted that into an evolving co-op program. They saw an opportunity to provide students with different ways to show their learning skills, build experiences, and demonstrate citizenship in and out of our school community. Their students have benefited from the program, our culture has gotten stronger, and our community is more connected. The co-op program was developed to get grade 6 students involved in our school community and further develop their learning skills. Students have weekly responsibilities in which they are accountable to their co-op teacher as well as their classroom teacher to fulfill various duties, including helping students one-on-one, small group work, helping with breakfast program, working with custodial staff, and much more. With such tremendous success within our building, they decided to extend the program into our community. This allowed students to create ties to the community and develop future employment skills. For example, they partnered up with St. Joseph's Villa, a long-term care facility, for an intergenerational learning experience, where students could participate in various activities and create connections with senior residents as well as staff at the villa. During the co-op program last year, grade 6 students demonstrated valued leadership and character in our school and community, which is a reflection of Fiona and Justine's dedication, commitment, hard work, and character that they have vested in the program. We saw our students demonstrating empathy, collaboration, kindness, caring, responsibility, and respect working throughout our classrooms, throughout our school, and in our community. They developed character and leadership through experiences the co-op program provided. Thank you, Fiona and Justine, for being such great innovators, creators, and educators.
April, do you want a picture? All right, so we've seen 3 of our groups being presented tonight. We started off with, I've lost my train of thought here. The system nomination was Debbie and Mary Kay. Then we moved into the EA award, and we've just heard from the elementary teachers. So now we're going to move on to one of our secondary teachers that we're honoring tonight. And I'll ask Rob Brome to come forward, please, and bring with him the recipient, Brian Dickey from Carleton Place Public High School. And Trustee Cram is not here tonight, so I've asked Trustee McPherson to come forward and present the award to them on his behalf.
I'll get comfortable, so, okay.
You have to pinch it when he goes too long, remember?
I was told to stick to a script, but you know me, right? So, well, some of you do anyways. So I wanted to first, before I get started, congratulate all the award recipients and their nominators, because it's, so we can clap to that. I think that's a good thing. Okay. I'd also like to thank Trustee Carol Karkner and Lisa Workman, because they were the frontline people getting this together, and appreciate the communication from them. I guess we should clap for them too, right? I want to thank the director, his senior staff, the rest of the trustees for taking the time to recognize some of the many people in this honorable profession who give so much of themselves each day to implement creative and innovative ways to connect with students. In a profession that asks so much of its people, it is important we pause and take this time. In my estimation, one can only be very good at be a very good educator if one takes the time to bring the best of themselves every day to the workplace and to just be there for the students. Which leads me to why it was an honor to nominate and a privilege to nominate, Brian Dickey of Carleton Place High School to receive the 2018 Trustee Innovation Award. I have gotten to know Brian on a personal level through our mutual participation in extensive wilderness canoe trips. It is during conversations with him on these trips that I developed a curiosity about Brian's innovative program that he created and implemented at Carleton Place High School, affectionately known as CPHS. and the impact that it had on the community, peers, and most importantly, the students. What I'm about to present to you with regards to Brian Dickey and his program is based on conversations and feedback from people that know him best as a person and as an educator. And two of the gentlemen are here tonight at the back of the room. You guys can wave just so they know who you're talking about. Okay, thank you very much. To best understand Brian and the impact his innovation program has had on students, one must first get to know Brian Dickey as a person and educator. So he taught in the Upper Canada District School Board, or he has taught, sorry, I haven't retired yet, right? And the predecessor board of Lanark County Board of Education for close to 30 years, and he brought the best of himself to the workplace on a regular basis throughout his career. When students and staff see Brian heading towards him, they get ready to become engaged and look forward to the action. He has a great talent for making students and staff feel special and building their self-esteem. I was told earlier not to diverge here, but I'm going to do it anyways. Short story. So last summer, 2017, we were on a 200-kilometer canoe trip. There were 7 of us on the trip. 4 of us are here tonight. And anyway, so Brian and his canoeing partner have taken the lead, and they're up front there. You know, we're paddling. This is about one of the last days of the trip. And they're paddling along. Both Brian and his paddling partner, Stephen King, unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but did provide feedback to this. They're motoring along, and I'm coming up beside them. Now, they were paddling tandem, and I'm paddling solo, right? But that means I'm by myself in a canoe, and I'm paddling along. And I'm coming up on the starboard side. That's the right side of a boat, right? And so we're coming along. And Brian looks over his right shoulder, and he says to me, Rob, don't let anybody ever tell you you're not in shape. So a guy, you know, in his late 50s, you know, you're going to take that to the bank, right? Especially coming from a guy like Brian, who's, you know, an expert in athleticism and everything. Anyhow. So then he turns and faces forward, and he says this to Stephen. He says, 100 strokes. And I'm like, what the heck's he talking about, 100 strokes? Next thing you know, they just disappear, right? They just take off. 100 strokes. And you know what? I caught up to them. But I just want to let you know, in front of all these people, I did let you guys win that one. Anyhow. So why did I tell that story? Well, the reason why is because when I was reflecting on the trip in the spring and I was looking at the Innovation Award, I thought of Brian and I thought of how much he must do this every day for students. You know, build their self-esteem, make them feel better about themselves. On a daily basis, Brian extols the achievements of students and colleagues past and present. He is a great motivator with a wonderful sense of what makes each student tick. He's a skilled communicator and an expert technician on safe and proper techniques and practices, and feeds off the energy of his students. He's extremely positive in recognizing classroom achievements verbally on a regular basis. His written evaluations show parents that Brian accurately portrays who their children are. Brian also has used social media platforms to post, with, of course, their permission, student successes, and has created legends. As Tom McKenna, who's standing at the back, had just talked to me recently, he, in his estimation, through Brian's program, he has developed a community of people at CPHS and beyond that look to him for guidance and direction. That's pretty special. This part of Brian has helped him to go above and beyond. Can you hear me without me speaking into that thing? Okay, thanks. So this part of Brian has helped me go above and beyond his daily work to create a world-class program at Carleton Place High School. Search the internet for CrossFit, CPHS, strength and conditioning, and see what Brian's up to today. Such things as secrets to success, be a good gym member, goal setting for the day. CrossFit is a high-intensity fitness program incorporating elements from several sports and types of exercise. So Brian incorporated CrossFit into the CPHS phys ed curriculum for it was the first high school in Canada to actually develop that. It's amazing. His knowledge of former students and his positive reputation with them was instrumental in allowing him to purchase top-of-the-line material at a good cost and have it delivered and installed quickly. The program has grown to the point where there are too many sections for him to teach by himself, or other teachers are covering the extra sections. And I understand, like all the grade 7, 8s, they want to be there. They want to come and do this. And that's a great way to get young kids involved, just by motivating them. Teachers from other school boards and schools come on PD days to look at Brian's program as a model. So through his positive energy and his creative and innovation in his developing this program, Brian's impact has been so great, I believe. As Carol Bouchner said, they may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And Brian has made them feel very good about themselves, a crucial skill in quality teaching. Many of his former students have gone on to post-secondary institutions in related areas of interest, and several of his former students presently work in the fitness industry. Countless former students returned to the school to reconnect with Brian and his program. Brian continues to be a lifelong learner, as he has taken and continues to take many courses in certifications in CrossFit, powerlifting, track and field. In addition, he attended many CrossFit competitions to learn from others. Go to CrossFit competitions and you might see CPHS CrossFit t-shirts. If you're fortunate, you might see Brian competing and spreading the word of CPS and the UCDSB across Canada and the world. As a result of this innovative program and his boundless positive energy, Brian has created legends of his students. Hence, Brian Dickey has become a legend himself with them. Thank you.
Okay, our next recipient, I invite Principal Terry Gardner from TIS to come forward along with Mary Louise, and Trustee McMillan Terry will tell us about why he nominated Marie.
Hello. Falcon Island Secondary School has a proud history of community projects. There are over 16 installations throughout Brockville, including the iconic statue of Con Darling, the railway station mural, the Rotary Park mural that Mary Louise was involved in, and underwater statues in a park, Riverside Park, that divers enjoy. So someone got a grant to make underwater water statues. And Mary Louise was involved in that project too. But the project that was nominated was Color Brockville. So Mary Louise pitched an interactive coloring book, and we were able to access some board innovative funding for transportation, release time, and printing. History, art, photography students visited historic and significant landmarks and buildings in Brockville. Students interpreted the buildings and landmarks in art and photography, and the history students wrote content for an interactive online resource. There's an interactive part of the coloring book that uses a phone app, and a viewer hovers over the picture, and there's video and audio content. This content was prepared by history and technology students and is still being updated throughout this semester. I think the project was magic in 4 ways. And if you have the opportunity to see a video that's posted on the agenda tonight, there's students talking about the project. So the first bit of magic is that students met librarians, historians, computer programmers, and business people. I happened to be at their first committee meeting, and students were showing their artwork, and the local businessmen and historians and librarians were so interested, gave such positive feedback. The students felt very empowered. Number 2, students worked in their strengths and interests. A young lady who's in the video talks about how she loves history and was able to write content for the interactive site. A boy who learned about a program called Blender in his computer game design class also was working in his strengths and his abilities and built content for the online portion. Students, number 3, students have a tangible product in the coloring book and the interactive resources that go along with it that recognizes their efforts. Number 4, the relationships that the students have developed with local historians have continued, and a group of students are still attend cultural days in Brockville and are sharing their passion for art, history, and architecture and design. And there's a phase 2 of the project yet to come, that the students are going to put interactive Bluetooth technology at these sites, and kind of like Pokemon Go app, they're able to make online content that that anyone visiting Brockville can share. Mary Louise's son Harrison is here, and he helped with the computer design and the augmented reality. Thank you, Harrison. Portion, and worked with the students. And Mary Louise's parents are watching online from Niagara. So it's with. And again, I urge you to watch the video to have the students talk. The students are talking about the impact of this project, how connected they were to it, how passionate they were to it, and how personalized their learning had become through the project. So it's my pleasure to nominate, and my thrill to have that she won this award, Mary Louise Scapitici.
And the last category that we're celebrating tonight is the group category, and we have a group that have come from Smith Falls, and I would ask them to come forward with Christy Redsma, who's going to present them and nominated them. And we have a great team. I'm going to let Christy introduce them all to us, and I would ask John McAllister to come up and make the presentation, since their trustee is not here tonight, Ms. Richards. And just a note to everyone who received an award, there are bags at the back door to put your awards in when you leave, so they won't get broken. So I'll get out of here.
Yeah, I got to organize it just a little bit.
You just go right ahead.
Take that.
Of course. Be away from the microphone now, right?
Hello, everyone. I too would like to thank Lisa and Carol for keeping us organized through this journey and this nomination process. Thank you, ladies. You really helped me out and helped me navigate what we needed to do to nominate these amazing people and have this a special night. So myself, along with Principal Marcia McNair and Casey Nelson, Vice Principal Casey Nelson, we would like to introduce you to our team of extraordinary educators and the recipients of the 2017-2018 Trustee Innovation Award. So we have with us hospitality teacher Jeff Burns, visual arts teacher Jen Fox, construction technology teacher Doug Miller, music teacher Kevin Baker, visual arts teacher Rebecca Soudan, and student success teacher Blake Seward. This team works collaboratively to plan, organize, deliver, assess, and evaluate student learning through the Restless Hot Cafe. Every second Thursday, our front foyer is bustling with about approximately 70 students who host a full cafe with exciting menus, prompt service, serene ambiance, and fabulous entertainment for our school and community. This experiential learning opportunity combines 5 curriculum areas through big ideas to maximize relevance, rigor, engagement for our students at SFDCI. Our team of teachers initially plan the outline of the cafe series together. Then each teacher takes a component back to their students to allow them to drive the planning and execution. Hospitality works on menu creation, food pricing, food preparation, and presentation. Media arts takes ideas from the menu and the theme to design posters that are used to advertise the cafe. Construction builds the tables for the guests and stages for the performers. Music students are responsible for the music and the entertainment. Visual arts students design and paint tabletops and backdrops. Our student success teacher, Blake Seward, coordinates the teachers and students who contribute to Big Ideas to ensure the project aligns with curriculum and that descriptive feedback is given in a timely fashion and to enhance student learning. In addition, Blake collaborates with our student success team to support and engage students who are at risk of credit attainment by connecting them with their interests and passions through the Red Hot Cafe. As a result, this team's commitment to innovation, the Restless Hawk Cafe is a place where students can celebrate their talents and differences and have a place where they truly belong. We could not be prouder to work with this amazing group of educators. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's where my kids graduated from.
I don't know who is going to be responsible for this, but I'll leave it with Don't fight over.
We'd like a picture of you.
You're gonna go home with Blake.
Gotta get out a little bit.
Casey and April, I want to take pictures.
Get cozy. Get cozy. Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of the award ceremony for this particular school year, 2017-2018, and congratulations to all the winners, the nominators, and the staff that was here and guests to support them. And right now, I'd like to turn it over to our chair, but before I do that, don't forget the bag here for your award. They've come in a very nice box this year, so they won't get broken on the way home. So over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. On behalf of all of us at the table, I want to congratulate each and every one of you, but I also want to thank you for what you do every day. You are obviously making a difference in the lives of the young people that we serve, and we as a Board of Trustees, and I know I speak for the senior team as well, cannot thank you enough for what you do. I'm asking you to go out and spread the word that the Board of Trustees value innovation. And, I was just saying, the director and I were just commenting how wonderful this is to actually see this event happen. It's a good thing, and we're so proud of what you do. And we want, as Trustee Karkner said earlier, there's a lot of good things happening out there, a lot of innovation. Pass the word, spread the word that we value innovation because we know in the end it's our young people who benefit. So thank you so much on behalf of all of us. Can I get a motion for a 5-minute break? Just thank you, Trustee McDonald, Trustee Jacobs. Just a show of hands. Okay, let's return at 20 after. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we've got the mics back on, and we're back to business. I'm going to do a report to the board from private session, September 26, 2018, and that is Committee of the Whole meeting in private session. 2 legal matters, 1 property, and 2 personnel matters were discussed. 4 recommendations are brought forward. So I have 4 motions. The first is that the Upper Canada, I need a mover and a seconder, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve resolution number PS 2018 September 12-002, carried in Committee of the Whole private. Moved by Trustee Bill McPherson, seconded by Trustee Swan. Should I have a show of hands, please? Or cast your votes, sorry. Apologies. And that carries. Thank you very much. The second motion is that the Upper Canada District School Board approve resolution PS 218 September 12-003, carried in Committee of the Whole session under agenda item D2 September the 12th 2018. Again, a mover and a seconder. Trustee Kartner, Trustee John McAllister. And again, cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. Third motion, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve resolution PS 2018 September 12-004, carried in Committee of the Whole private session under agenda item D3 September 12, 2018. A mover and a seconder. Trustee Swan and Trustee Bill McPherson. Again, cast your votes.
Protesters out there?
Getting rowdy in the hall.
Party's out there.
Thank you very much, and that carries. Thank you very much. And the final motion is that the Upper Canada District School Board approve resolution number PS 2018 September 12-005, carried in Committee of the Whole private session under agenda item D3 September 12, 2018. And again, you need a mover and a seconder for that. Trustee Bill McPherson and Trustee McDonald. Cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our next presentation, which is the Rural Guidance Counselor Pilot Project Update to the Board. I'm going to turn this over to our Director, and he's going to invite 2 of our guests who have patiently waited at the back of the room. And Director, I'll have you do the introductions for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce the trustees to 2 of our partners from the Faculty of Health at York University, Dr. Michael Coons and Marianne Coe. Marianne and Michael, along with our former Superintendent Val Allen, who you saw here this evening, and Superintendent Ron Ferguson, were instrumental in terms of helping to cobble together a pilot program using the rural and northern education funding that the board received in 2017. And as you noted in your report this evening for the presentation, the funding was specific to schools that qualified as rural, and there was quite a great deal of latitude in how that funding could be applied. In discussions with the senior team and knowing that the board has a strong investment in student well-being, it was decided that the dollars could be diverted to our Tier 1 of our 3-tier strategy around student well-being, and particularly with the 15 secondary schools that qualified and generated this funding through the Rural Guidance Counselor, or Rural and Northern Education funding. So many trustees I know around the table have heard some feedback from local schools about the staffing that came with part of this strategy, but I don't believe that the trustees have heard much about what exactly are these additional staff doing and how is it making a difference in rural schools in terms of the support that the guidance department and student services is providing. Excuse me. So this evening I do hope that you'll have a better understanding by the end of the presentation, and we welcome your questions after you hear what Dr. Coons, Ms. Coe, and Superintendent Ferguson have to share. So I'll turn it back over to them.
Through you, Chair. So as the Director mentioned, the Rural Guidance Counselor Pilot Program Project, we tried to shorten that and come up, but it didn't really work with anything. An RGCPPP didn't really work, so we just go with the full name for this one. So what is it? Well, it's an augmenting of guidance counselor sections and allocations to each of the rural schools. Targeted staff development for these personnel in the areas of the three basic functions of school guidance counselors. Those three being personal counseling, academic counseling, and career counseling. So the scope and the sequence of the pilot project began February 2018 and runs until June 2019. And there's 4 additional sections of guidance for all schools in the project per semester. So each of those 3 semesters, 4 additional sections for all the schools that are in the pilot. We also had targeted training to refresh guidance counselor skills in the academic counseling, the career education counseling, and in health counseling. So what we have in front of you here are some of the documents that help guide our thinking around this. So if all the way back to 1999, Choices into Action outlined 3 basic functions of school guidance counselors: the personal counseling, the academic counseling, and career counseling. And then in 2013, there was a bit of a refresher, an update called Creating Pathways to Success, and this supersedes the direction that Choices into Action offers around guidance and career education for students, and it created new expectations, but it is silent on the role of personal counseling, which has traditionally been a key element in the guidance counselor role. And then in 2013 as well, Supporting Minds document came out that everyone around this table is familiar with, and provide an update and a detailed approach for supporting and engaging students in personal counseling related to mental health and well-being. And what you see before us here is our district model of support. And again, this is not something that will be new to anyone around this table, showing our tiered approach. And you can see on this slide that the guidance counselors fit within Tier 1, and their work would be around, and again, you see there that's delivered to 100% of students. And at this point, I'm going to pass things over to our friends from York, and they're going to walk us through some things as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Ron, and thank you, Stephen, and thank you to the Chair and the rest of the Board for having us. And I do extend greetings from a couple of colleagues, Tanya Sherry, who's our Executive Director with the Health Leadership and Learning Network at York University, as well as our Dean of the Faculty of Health, Dr. McDonald. Just a quick sort of introduction to our group and myself and what we have been doing over the last several years. So I am a psychologist by profession. And I have spent the bulk of my career helping people to make changes in a number of different areas. Changes related to health, changes related to improving people's mental health and overall well-being. And for the last several years, we have been developing a pretty exciting training program at York University related to the practice of health coaching. And the term health coaching may or may not be familiar to people, but essentially at the heart of health coaching is working with a person to find out what's important to them, what their priorities are, and working with that person to figure out how to make and consider some healthy changes. We've learned over years of telling people what to do somehow doesn't work, or it's not quite enough. Telling a person to make a change in their life is hard. Because we all have lots of habits that form for different reasons. So at the heart of what we do at York University is work with an interprofessional group of people to help a range of different individuals make changes. So we were so very excited to be approached by Stephen and Ron and Val in the Upper Canada District School Board to consider how we would develop a customized program specifically to support guidance counselors in the high school panel in the rural context in supporting students in making some changes. So the project itself really is sort of an exciting initiative in that it focuses on skill development. Skill development to help guidance counselors have conversations with students, meaningful conversations to figure out and identify what their priorities are, what's important to them, what kinds of changes might be important to improve a number of areas related to their mental health. Could be anxiety, substance use, and especially disengagement. Because as we all know, there are a number of students who attend schools, sometimes don't attend schools, who are sort of disengaged. So really that was sort of at the heart and the crux of the style of communication that is central to health coaching. And really we approach this as a partnership, this pilot project, and specifically meeting with the guidance counselors themselves to develop our relationships, figure out what issues, right, are germane to them in their experience in the guidance counselor role in the rural context, and then develop the training sort of around that. And so the model very much aligns with the role of the guidance counselor in that Tier 1 setting. Not everyone needs specialized services such as a psychologist or the Tier 2, Tier 3 supports. But we wanted to really equip these guidance counselors with the tool to fulfill their role in that personal counseling space, which is sort of in line with the documents that Ron briefly mentioned. So the program itself emerged into 5 full days of learning and experience, which may sound like a lot. We know that this is sort of the most amount that has been dedicated to this type of training, for guidance counselors. And the training was sort of broken down into components of learning some skills, talking about applications of ways to communicate and work with students and support them, and then practice. And the practice specifically is our model is we use simulations where we develop standardized experiences, standardized situations, partner with groups of professional actors, and now let's practice. Let's practice using those skills in a very supportive context. In our experience, as was doing this kind of work was maps on directly with what we experienced with the counselors, and that idea of practice was scary at first, but really is what helped to drive home the skills to build their confidence. Just looking at a few quotes from the feedback that we received from the guidance counselors themselves was that it was really practical. It was so relevant. We even had one guidance counselor who said, this situation that we just worked through could have been any one of my students in my school. So we really maximized the relevance for them. Very practical experiences and providing them with immediate feedback on ways to consider communicating with them in that moment, right? When they're sitting with a student who's maybe in tears about something that's very upsetting to them or overwhelming. Very excellent PD. Personal interviewing, nice pacing, good opportunity, to practice, what you're learning. So we were very pleased with the feedback, and I think that was a testament to the partnership that we developed, from the onset of the program, and really excited at the potential, the relevance that was the guidance counselors were seeing, in their roles and the applications of the skills. And we look forward to rolling this out with future cohorts, as Stephen will or Ron will speak to, sort of in a moment.
So what I wanted to share in this particular slide is that members of the board will know that at our school level, we have our school improvement planning, and this past year, out of the director's work plan came an emphasis around setting wellness goals at each of our 79 schools. At the secondary school level, it's clear to us that the rural guidance counselor can serve as a lead facilitator for that discussion around well-being. First of all, of course, is because it's not uncommon for student services departments in our secondary schools to be a focal point for students who have concerns and need to bring a confidential disclosure about a health need or mental health need. And so it naturally is a place where we expect that students would bring wellness questions forward. But as well, the guidance counselor is privy to information about the student body and about the school culture that perhaps regular classroom teachers are not necessarily privy to in the nature of their work. So we do see that the guidance counselors are going to be a key resource for helping to build the capacities around not only setting goals around student well-being, but promoting criteria for monitoring, giving feedback, and assessing the value of that goal in the secondary school. By and large, our secondary schools are generally larger than our elementary schools, and because of that, we do need people who are also supporting key teacher leaders and the administration of the school to develop and coordinate these roles. I'll turn it back over to Superintendent Ferguson.
Sure. So again, we mentioned this briefly before, but the increase is 4 additional sections per school per semester, each of the 3 semesters. And the project timelines, again, this breaks it down in a little more detail from the previous slide, but it shows that in January 2018, we advised secondary schools regarding the general scope and focus of the Rural Guidance Counselor Program pilot and initiated discussions with the external service provider related to program and pilot and staff development needs. And then in February of 2018, we did confirm which personnel at each of the participating schools were designated as the full-time guidance counselors that we aligned with this pilot project and the funding, and we initiated a meeting of personnel to further inform and promote the pilot project's goals and expectations so that people will start to have an idea about what this is all about. And in March in 2018, we initiated meetings with the external service provider, which we now know as York, and regarding an orientation session with program pilot participants. And then in April of the same year, we provided first training session on Module 1, which is related to health coaching and the guidance counselor role. And then in May, getting closer to the end of the year, we assessed the implementation of the pilot results from Term 1. In August, we were planning for 2018 and 19 with York and with members of the School Operations Committee. And looking forward, we re-engage guidance counselors from Cohort 1 from the 2017-2018 year with follow-up training. And then in March 2019, initiate a meeting with participants from Cohort 2, the rural schools that qualify under the funding. And then in May 2019, initiate needs assessment for remaining schools that have not been part of it. And then in September 2019, initiate a meeting with participants from Cohort 3, the Brockville, Cornwall schools that do not qualify for the rural funding.
I wanted to mention to trustees that part of the obligation of receiving the funding from the province was to provide disclosure publicly about how the dollars were spent. We've taken the 2 steps that are required. One is to produce some sort of documentation and have that posted on our website, and it's been there since March. We haven't heard back from the Ministry of Education yet about any other kind of formal reporting around this particular funding, but we are well prepared to provide the evidence and the documentation for that, and we suspect it may be forthcoming. The second step is to make sure that the trustees have an update about how we've dispensed those funds, because $1.8 million is a lot of money, and we would want to ensure that you know that we have been good stewards of those dollars and have used them in ways that had immediate student benefit. Notwithstanding that, in some offline conversations, several of you around the table have mentioned to me that you knew of the staffing and that you had received good feedback from schools and parents, and that it was seen as a very valuable enhancement to the board's current effort to resource this key area. I think there's one more slide, and that one is about asking questions. But we want to make sure that, especially having our partners from York University here, if there's anything that you're wondering about the nature of the partnership and what they are doing to enhance our approach to bring something around targeted staff development for people who we really rely on for that Tier 1 support in our secondary schools, I hope that you'll ask. I know that Marianne hasn't had a chance to comment yet, but I do want you to know that Marianne was instrumental in the program development because she did a lot of research that was locally based, locally driven, including information around poverty, substance abuse, and other needs that may actually play out by how children are presenting at school. And so that was another key piece to this, of course, is that the scenarios and the information being brought to the rural guidance counselors was not generic. It was Upper Canada District School Board information. And I think that that was really critical. That helped to further, apart from the methodology that you heard Dr. Kuhn speak to this evening, really helped to drive home that this was really relevant to us in our school district. So I'll turn it back over to the trustees to see if they have any questions for the superintendent, our guests from York and our partners from York, and or myself.
Certainly. So we'll open it up. So we'll start with Trustee Bill McPherson.
Thank you, through the chair. As I look over the list of schools that benefited from this program, they are very distinctly rural schools. Farmer Day means John Deere hats. I have a little concern in that my interpretation of this money was to enhance the success of our rural schools. Was there any component of the training of our new guidance counselors that would address the rural nature of these high schools? A rural high school, quite often 75% of the students are not academic students. They could very well be going straight into the workforce. Some of them, in some areas, will be going straight back to the farm. So, I don't see anything in this that addresses the rural nature of those schools that are identified in the initial part of the report, through the chair.
Okay, let's start with the director, and then you can go from there.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, you may recall that in one of the early slides that Superintendent Ferguson presented was the three-tier focus of documentation that we're using from the Ministry of Education. The focus on career studies and career planning really does speak to the rural school realities that we're looking at, because we have a number of students who are thinking about occupations and commitments that might fall outside of what their peers are studying in our city schools. So we did have, and we haven't provided necessarily a full range of the training that was provided beyond our partnership with York. We did have a focus on academic counseling. We did have a focus on career counseling. And we also want to start to find out, well, what is it about career counseling that's going to be significant or important? Superintendent Coombs and Principal Trassick was party to the presentations this year, and it falls nice and squarely in the student success and the specialist high skills major area as well. So part of what we need to do is also to work on career planning and the facilitation of career planning. That's part of the guidance teacher's responsibilities.
Okay. Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Just a quick question, it's for clarification. Are these PA days, like this training, is it mandatory for the counselors, or can they opt out of it?
Mr. Chair, through you, all of the training, because of this special assignment, was required for our guidance counselors to participate in. They were in a unique role that they didn't have any other instructional responsibilities outside of student services, which really meant that the opportunity to have them come forward was very cost effective, because we didn't have teacher costs to backfill the absence, and we had colleagues in student services that were able to still be present to offer the service. So we did make it mandatory, with the key understanding with principals when this staffing was provided, that we did require the principals to support their release and for guidance counselors to be present in their participation. It's one of those interesting opportunities, however, that what became mandatory became actually desired. And, proof of that is that we had, with one exception because of a family circumstance, 100% turnout in the training that was offered by our York partners. And we had nearly 100% turnout, again, with the exception of a family matter, of the training that we had around academic counseling and career counseling.
Okay, thank you. Trustee McAllister.
I don't know to whom I should address my question, but one of you, feel free. I have two schools which participated in this project, and I know it was a great benefit to them as well as to every other high school that participated. One of my concerns, of course, is the pilot nature of this project. And I'm wondering if one of you could comment on the sustainability in the future of it. The second comment I really have to make is that I know you talked about the kind of feedback you got from the participants being the guidance counselors, and that was well and good. Had you developed any kind of a technique to gain feedback from students?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, I'll begin with the question about sustainability, and I'll turn it over to our partners and our superintendent about the feedback piece. So, trustees around the table will know that all funding is always subject to change and risk of other agenda or other priorities, and we're very mindful of that as well. So the 2-year pilot was an effort to build a focus and a sustainability post funding, should it no longer be in existence by the province, or in the event that the board has other priorities. So what's very clear to us is that success sells itself, and that we do believe, number one, that it's underscored from the school-based staffing perspective the importance of having, at minimum, one full-time guidance counselor consistently in student services. Always the risk in small schools is to see if we can use people's time in creative and purposeful ways to offer other options for students through the timetable. And sometimes that does encroach on guidance counselor time. And it's not that they're doing something outside of their work. Often they may be teaching courses that are part of the guidance curriculum. Our position here is that knowing that we have other options, and you'll recall Superintendent Mills' previous presentations around e-learning, there's a lot of other options that we can provide students to explore those experiences online or through continuing ed, but maintain the integrity of having that full-time guidance counselor present in schools. So the test of time will show that when we're past the 2-year mark, and when we're not augmenting the staffing allocations at secondary schools, that the model continues and persists. And so far, so good, and we feel encouraged that that will be the case. I'll turn it over to the superintendent to comment about feedback, and to Michael and Marianne to see if they have any comments in that regard.
So through you, Chair, in relation to your particular question around feedback from students, we did make an effort to ask some principals to provide us some feedback, and I can share a couple quotes with you just from some of our students. So one of our UCDSB students said, that, and I quote, "The thing that I like most about having a full-time guidance counselor at my school is that I don't have to feel like I'm always interrupting someone. The teachers are always very busy with their classes, so it's good to know there is someone who has time for me." That was one. Another one, "The guidance teacher is inspiring. She helped us reduce our stress, anxieties, and made us more comfortable at exam time. She always carries a big smile." And we have similar quotes from some principals that I might share with you as well. So one of our principals that were part of the pilot provided the feedback. "The rural guidance pilot has been transformative for our school. Prior to the project, we focused on managing groups of students for things like course selection, college applications, etc. Now we work with students as individuals to support them and plan for them, which has created a palpable positive atmosphere in the school." Another principal from a different school, "The additional guidance staff was extremely appreciated by the students at our school. Our students had increased access to a caring adult who was focused on the wellness of students. Our students knew that there was always a guidance staff member to speak with who was available each day, each period. Guidance was more accessible, with double the eyes in the hallway, looking for student needs, and double the ears, listening to student issues. With the extra sections, our guidance department was able to improve our wellness promotion throughout the school. New initiatives in the school were developed, such as our wellness zone, stress management activities, in particular before our exams, and we were able to share extra resources with students and place things such as bulletin boards in the girls' and boys' bathrooms." So there's just a little snapshot of some of the feedback that we have, but to your point as well, I think going forward we hope to and we plan to gather even more feedback from the students that are benefiting from this pilot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Armour.
I think when we can add staff, through you, Chair, to any of our schools is fabulous. So my question, though, is in regards to the health coaching model. How was it developed, and have you ever used it in an academic setting like this with kids, or is it something that you see more one-on-one in the hospital setting, things like that? So is this more of a research project that you're doing, or is it actually something that works in this setting? That's my question. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, I mean, the model itself originally emerged out of some very specific work with people who are struggling with addictions. Recognizing that these are a population of people who are struggling to make healthy choices and decisions, simply by being told not to be drinking didn't seem to be sufficient, and emerged a more of a process of working collaboratively with individuals to decide what makes sense to them. We then saw it applied to a number of health-related areas, not just in the mental health space. But the model and the skills and the communication tools are applicable at the level of an individual, level of a group. We're even seeing it applied to level of organizations. And although this is the first project and collaborative project between our group and sort of the academic school setting, there's a whole body of literature, research literature, that supports the use of the model and the tools in schools with guidance counselors and teachers.
Address your question. Are we collecting data on it to see if it's working? That's my last question.
Mr. Chair, through you, at two levels. One is from a staff development side, that understanding the immediate value of the training that's part of health coaching. And then in the second year of this pilot, to start pulling from people about how are they using the training since we wrapped up in June. So next week we have a webinar, and that will be our first check-in with the group that was trained, and we'll get a sense about how people are utilizing their training and the value for that. And we want to continue to try to build a deeper capacity to know that this is more than kind of a one-shot exposure to a concept. We really want to get closer to what's really working for that, because as you knew from the timelines, we're planning to reach out to a different group of personnel in rural schools who had not been trained in the guidance department. And these are people who are not necessarily full-time, part-time, quarter-time when they're teaching in the classroom, but they have student services responsibilities. And then we want to prepare for the final push, which is to bring our larger cluster of schools in terms of student body in Brockville and Cornwall on side, because they also need to have that exposure. So I do think that we're going to get the feedback that we need, and we'll have confirmation about what tools were used immediately, which ones are in reserve, and which ones are atrophizing because people don't see an immediate use in a K-12 or grade 9 to 12 environment.
It's fabulous. Yeah, I'd love to see those results.
Okay, Trustee McDonald.
So I have a couple of questions. My first questions, though, are around the health coaching side of things, and then I'll have some specific questions around the guidance piece. So first, on the health coaching model, when I look at some of your information, you just alluded to the fact that it was specific to teachers and guidance counselors. Whenever you're delivering this PD, is this something that was developed specifically for teachers and guidance counselors, or is it a section of your health coaching certificate program that you've got?
So we used our health coaching certificate program as a foundation, but all of the content was customized for the context of the guidance counselor in the high school panel, and specifically in the rural context. To several of Stephen's comments about the information presented, Marianne, our program manager, she really, she was speaking to the local public health departments, trying to gather local data, so we could contextualize it as much as possible. All of the case examples were customized, high school student issues that the guidance counselors are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So although our existing program served as sort of that scaffolding or foundation, it was all customized.
Sorry, and to add to that, we also spoke to the guidance counselors, all 15 of them in person, and then we had a phone call focus group with a couple of them, and then I took themes that emerged and we sort of drilled them down, and then we went back to the group again here in Rockville, and we clarified the themes with them, and that's where we got really specific context about the rural situation, such as disengagement, the fact that it's small communities and people feel more social pressures to fit in. So these are very specific things to the rural context.
Thank you. Yep, certainly.
So when I look through your Health Coaching Institute, it doesn't talk to me about specifics. So you said you've modeled this specifically for teachers and guidance counselors. Could it be modeled to child and youth workers? Could it be modeled to EAs? Could it be modeled to school administrators? Could it be modeled to office administrators? There is scalable nature associated to this?
Absolutely. So this project was specific to the guidance counselor context, but we are absolutely seeing the similar model and tools used in a variety of other contexts, at a variety of different levels within organizations. So could it be adapted to address some of the tier 2, even tier 3 sort of level services? Absolutely.
Thank you. Student trustee Kadra.
Through you, Chair, I'd just like to thank everyone, first and foremost, you two and everyone around the board table who has put their hard work into this. It's no secret that student wellness has been declining through the years, not only in the school board but across the province and the country. My only concern is something that possibly may not fall under this program. I'm not sure, but the student idea, or I don't want to call it stigma, but the idea that guidance counselors are not easily accessible in rural schools, because the average ratio of guidance counselors to students is 396 to 1. Many students know that when they come into student services, the chances of seeing a guidance counselor are very slim. My only concern is that the hard work that has gone into this pilot project may not be used as effectively as we hope it is, just due to students not knowing that it's there or that it's available for them.
Perhaps just to quickly comment to that, at one of the foundational level of the process is building relationships with the people that we're working with, and in this context it's students. Sometimes the relationships that are built between a teacher or guidance counselor and a student doesn't happen in the guidance counselor office. Sometimes it happens in the hallway, right, or at the front door of the school, coming to and from the school. And we've really emphasized that point. And the question in terms of how students might come right to the attention of a guidance counselor who might be struggling with certain issues, and really talked about how do we take what we do, even just outside of the office setting, to increase the chance that a student would think to or feel comfortable coming to the guidance counselor with a particular issue or problem.
Thank you. Trustee Wendy McPherson.
My question's for the director, and quickly just to say, Bushra, the Student Senate had a big part in helping us get or make us aware of the mental health, so you've got a big job ahead of you. I just wanted to be clear on the 1.8 million. That was something that we had discretion with, and we decided to put it towards our mental health, and I just wanted to make the people out there understand that this is something that we decided to do with the money for rural affairs. Is that fair enough statement?
Mr. Chair, through you, that's correct. The funding was very unrestricted, with the exception of which schools could benefit from it. And they did give some examples or hints about what might be seen as being a reasonable expenditure. So they did talk about additional staff. They did talk about enhancing the infrastructure in terms of Wi-Fi environments. They did talk about the concept of training or development that might be unique to your area. But apart from those, very broad-based examples. It was really quite open, and a number of boards in Ontario that were recipient of the funding have done everything from putting Wi-Fi on buses to augmenting their special education resources like educational assistants.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee McAllister. My question, I guess it's a common question, but your focus is on the skill development, and personal skill development in the three areas of career planning, personal planning, and academic planning. My 32 years as a secondary teacher has provided me with a few biases, and one of them is that guidance counselors too often were working on the academic planning, and in fact were working for the universities and colleges as opposed to working with students. And I'm really pleased to see that there's an alignment between the student improvement plan for student achievement, the school improvement plan for student achievement and wellness. And can you comment on that at all?
Well, I echo your comments and excitement. Our role in the larger project was on that personal counseling side of things, and the partnership that we were engaged, part of the partnership that we were engaged for was to really, hone in and focus on those skills. And it was interesting, even just reflecting back to some of a couple of other comments from guidance counselors in the process. This was sort of the first time they have had, in a long time since their teacher training, focus on those counseling skills, which was exciting to them. Opportunities to get feedback on their skills and the use of those skills in very specific situations that they encounter every day. So I as a psychologist, I too was very excited. To be honest with you, I was a bit surprised just at the imbalance that likely happens across boards, not just unique to Upper Canada District. Thinking about my own consultations within the board, within the Halton District School Board, where my practice exists. I think there's opportunity, right, for growth in that personal counseling space, for guidance counselors.
Director, you want to comment further on that?
Yes, I think, Mr. Chair, this was an opportunity to recenter the work around building relationships and connecting with students, and not simply about some of those peak periods that comes with supporting student transition, which has always been valued by guidance counselors, families and students do, of course, and that is about the application to colleges and universities. It starts, around the end of November and goes until early February, I suppose. We want to remember that these are people who are tasked with very unique work, and we don't want it to become undervalued or highly administrative versus to remember that they are teachers and counselors, and to use the benefit of their training in both those areas.
Thank you very much. Trustee McDonald.
A couple more questions now around the guidance component part of it, I guess. As far as having it as a pilot project, Director, what was the evidence that drove you to deciding that we would use rural funding to implement guidance, and then subsequently go further to say we were going to use health coaching? So what evidence did we base that pilot project on?
Mr. Chair, through you, there was an analysis of the Ontario College of Teacher course outlines for guidance part 1, 2, and 3, and looking at what the skills that were supposed to be firmly in place when somebody has achieved that training, and what we had heard how our guidance staff have been applying their work seemed to resemble the earlier observation of Trustee McAllister that the work had strayed over time. Part of that is because the government has not, with the exception of 2013, invested much in terms of focus and orientation of what they wanted guidance counselors to do. The last full snapshot was 1999. And what's happened is that in all districts in Ontario, there seems to have been some drift in terms of that work. Another key document that was put into place was, or that was referenced as a way to go forward, was the People for Education study that looked at rural schools and programs at rural schools, and guidance counseling, guidance support was another key element about that. The last part was actually listening to students ourselves, and several trustees around the table were part of the Student Senate meeting in October 2017 when we were reviewing the crew priorities of the board. And through that facilitated session, we heard firsthand students feeling that there needed to be more work to have a presence of guidance counselor, and that their skills needed to match what the needs were. The needs were to have an immediate contact with somebody who would either be an agent of referral to a community service or to one of our own services that we have in the school board, or to be able to do some sort of frontline intervention to help alleviate anxiety and to bring some calm. The last point I wanted to raise as well is what we also understood was that the majority of the staff that we have that completed their credentials in guidance have done them online. And so while the online environment can leverage a great deal of learning in a variety of ways that are really quite profound, guidance counseling is a person-to-person job description. And I wasn't confident that we have done much about that in our district over the last many years. We've had other priorities, of course, and this was a chance to kind of infuse some focus in person-to-person skills, and also to upgrade those skills since the majority of our guidance counselors received their training.
Follow? Yep.
So I heard a piece of evidence then locally, anecdotal from the students, saying that they feel that they needed some additional supports for guidance. So if that's the indication of why we wanted to move towards having additional guidance counselors in rural schools, how do we know what success looks like then? If we're basing it on primarily on some of those external reports, what do we know? How do we know if we've reached success, and how do we know whether we're attaining what we had anticipated to achieve?
Mr. Chair, through you, that's an excellent question. Year 2 of the pilot is going to be instrumental for that, because we'll be able to confirm how people have changed their practice, what they believe has been beneficial, and while we have anecdotal comments in the period of March to June, when we were emphasizing the training, there may have not been the adequate time to actually apply that and see what was the immediate value. So we will be collecting that data from the guidance counselors. We do want to get closer to what is the training that they require based on how they approach their work, and whether they're approaching their work in a balanced way. We do need to move to some model where we're infusing Tier 1 as being something that extremely dynamic in terms of what we're asking all of our staff to do around the focus of that Supporting Minds document. The Supporting Minds document is about helping to label what a young person is bringing to you as in terms of their need or the support that they require, and to either be able to engage that at our level as educators, or to be able to engage it with resources of people who are trained to go beyond what educators ordinarily do.
Thank you. I'm just going to have 2 more questions. Trustee Bill McPherson and then Trustee Armour.
Thank you. Through the chair. First, a comment. I'm concerned about sustainability of this program. Is it going to be self-perpetuating? We can't count on that 1.8. I do have, I guess you could say, curiosity about something here. Is why, when we're talking about rural mental health, we have to reflect that the board as a whole is a rural board. The schools that we've identified are very distinctly rural schools, some more than others. Why did we go with a large urban university for health training when we have rural mental health programs being developed in a fair number of our more rural-based universities, like the University of Guelph and places like that? So that's just the farmer curiosity coming out in me. Not that I have anything against York University, it's just that at 53,000 students, They have more students than I have people within my ward. And I know how rural my ward is. So, through the chair.
Mr. Chair, through you, we did do a preliminary analysis in the fall of 2017 about what kind of programs were out there, who would be prepared to work with us to modify the programs or training that they provide to our specifications, who has had some success in working with a broad group of people that would be close to what educators do. And in each case in the consultation about talking to more local partners, either they were not offering this kind of training, they couldn't adjust it to match our needs. In other words, it was a boilerplate and you had to accept it as is. And they were somewhat concerned that that they couldn't modify it in time for us to engage it in a meaningful way. And we also had heard through the circles of professional educators that they've had positive experiences of working with York University, although not with the Faculty of Health Sciences. But we thought we would give that a try because we had nothing to lose and we didn't have anybody in the near surrounding vicinity who, while they may know about our jurisdiction and our schools, were not necessarily prepared to engage this this focus. The closest focus I could find actually was around public health. And while there's some programs that look at public health, we already have a working relationship with our two local public health organizations and would be providing a lot of what one university would be prepared to do. So I wouldn't want us to think that we're confined by our partnership with York University, far from that. But I do think that what we've done is we've done something that's unique in Canada. No other school board, I understand, Michael and Marianne are working with you in this regard, so that we had a lot to learn, and York has been very accommodating to our requests and needs. And the process that Marianne outlined, which I should have done at some point earlier, spoke to the ability to customize and personalize this to our students, our professionals, and in our district. And I think that's why it was so well attended, for sure. While it was obligatory, doesn't mean that people were engaged. And the assessment about engagement was very high.
Thank you. And final question, Trustee Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two quick questions. I think this is fabulous, and hats off to your team, Steve, for being flexible with this. This is great. I'm curious on the results, so I'd like to see those when they come out in year 2, if I'm still here. And my last question is in regards to budget. So are we on budget for this? And if we aren't, are we prepared to put money into this so that we can get a full 2 years out of this to make a good assessment on it? Because I would hate to fall short with our kids.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chair, through you, we're fortunate that we are on budget both last year and in this year. We do want to watch that carefully because part of what eats up budget is actually the travel. It's the venue where we may be doing that. And the human resource costs are actually the largest drawdown on the resources of the $1.8 million. On a go-forward basis, again, a part of what the trustees do each spring is they ask for recommendations, and there's always good recommendations I hope that we bring to you. There are always competing priorities, and our goal is to make this sustainable, to have it stand on its own 2 feet. And at the same time, if we've gone beyond the rural component, that by September 2019 we're going to the schools that don't qualify, we may be asking as a staff about how we can leverage that, because it would fall outside of what this funding would allow.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That was a great discussion. I want to thank both of you for coming down and joining us tonight, and thank you for the work that you're doing with us on behalf of all of our kids. So thank you
very much for having us.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item is the special recognition days. I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Phil Dawes.
Tony.
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to have this opportunity to take a brief presentation on the topic of special recognition days for 2018-19. Very pleased to have joining me this evening our interim manager of communications, April Scott Clark. So welcome, April, to the table. Always happy, Chair, to have the opportunity to remind ourselves of our mission. We prepare all students for a successful life, and needless to say, special recognition days can reflect our organizational values and certainly provide focus for students' engagement and learning. So there's a definite connection with this topic and our mission. Trustees may recall it was about a year ago, June 2017 to be exact, that the board adopted policy 455 specific to special recognition days. And this slide takes an element from that policy, just clarifying the criteria that are used to identify special recognition days each year. So we're looking for special recognition days that have demonstrable educational value. We're looking for special education days that have a clear connection to the board's mission, values, strategic plan, or we're looking for special recognitions that help to understand and promote the general benefit of the community as a whole. Also in policy 455 is mention of the requirement for staff to bring to the board each year an indication of the special recognition days which are planned for the year. So that's the purpose of this presentation. It's specific to item 2.3 of policy 455. Chair, my intention tonight was not to go through each special recognition day by month. I'm seeing some nods of thanks on that. We do have a number of them. But, I think our board can feel proud of what we do in this area. So they're all listed for you by month, and we've provided them for you a complete list as attachment A to your introductory placeholder report. So they're there for the viewing if you prefer, or we have them by slide if that helps as well. And I said it was a quick presentation. I meant it. Wrapping up, just a reminder, I feel like in communications we've really had a great year last year using the foundation of Policy 455 to get a little more clarity on special recognition days. So we're looking forward this year to taking that even further. Special recognition days tend to fall into several categories: international, national, provincial. We're very interested in the local ones as well. So what are our schools doing that they can use special recognition days to really bring in student voice? So that's work that we plan to undertake this year as best possible in connection with the communications work plan. And the list that you're looking at has not changed from last year, but certainly open to questions that you may have at this time with respect to that list. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, we do. Sorry, didn't see you there.
Sorry.
Trustee Bill McPherson.
Through the chair. Now, this list, I take it, is not cast in stone. If a principal decides to not honor one of these suggestions, it's up to their prerogative.
Thank you for the question through you, Chair. You're absolutely right. We look for flexibility from our schools as to what they want to address. However, I will point out some of them on the more international or national scale. We take an approach where we're looking for board-wide participation, but again, we do want to dig in this year to find out where that is.
Part number 2. If a principal chooses to honor something that is not on the list, they still have that prerogative.
Through you, Chair, we do have examples.
Yes. The nature of their community.
We do have examples in past years where that has been the case, and we're always willing and able to help out to the best of our ability with schools that are taking on days that are not identified on this list. Yes.
Yeah, like Christmas is not on the list.
Right.
And I know I shouldn't go there, but there are a lot of holiday concerts out there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Trustee Carter.
Through you, Chair, I just want to say I appreciate being notified, especially when the flags are going to be at half-mast. I know we have one right now for the peace officers and police officers, and I am often asked in the community, why are the flags at half-mast at the high school? So I'm ready with the answer, so I appreciate that sharing with us.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Item. I'm going to pass the chair over to my vice chair so I can be a part of the discussion. Any concerns?
No.
No? Okay, thank you.
So on that note, I will turn it over to the director to introduce Superintendent Deanna. Terry?
Madam Chair, thank you. Through you. Members of the board will recall that in June, Superintendent Backstrom brought forward a report on projected efficiencies that came out of the Steel Board of Governors meeting and how that would be implemented into the 2018-2019 school year. Part of our presentation that evening was to come back with an early snapshot of the implementation as per your request. And so we're here tonight to give you that snapshot as of last Tuesday and to answer any questions that you may have about how that's being rolled out so far. You'll notice in your covering report for tonight's presentation that the background identified what were the two essential adjustments around efficiency measures for September 2018. One was the alignment of walk zones for grades 7 and 8 students so that it aligned more with students in grade 9 and 12. And then secondly was the removal of courtesy riders and the broad open seat application process that have been part of our transportation services culture for quite some time. The last thing to update you about is that there has been some, as you might imagine at the start of a school year, activity around parents making inquiries about student transportation, plus making inquiries about student transportation as a result of these changes or adjustments. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Perry, and Superintendent Ferguson is also supporting the presentation tonight, simply because we have kind of the pre-September 2018 dialogue, of which Superintendent Ferguson was part of that, Madam Chair, and then our current September 2018 and onwards conversation that Superintendent Perry is overseeing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I am going to speak to you about the commitment that was made on June 6th to provide a follow-up regarding the implementation of student transportation and changes. So the first slide talks to what has changed and what has stayed the same. We have changes to the walk zone for grade 7 and 8 students. It's a 400 meter change to bring it into alignment with the walk zone for high school students to 2 kilometers. And no courtesy seats are offered for any student in the walk zone unless there are medical considerations, safety hazards, emergencies, or extraordinary or exceptional circumstances. What is still the same as it was last year, walk zones for kindergarten students remain the same. Walk zones for the students in grades 1 to 3 remain the same. The walk zones for students in grade 4 to 6 remain the same. And student transportation that was grandfathered. So legacy riders related to pre-existing cross-boundary transportation commitments remain the same as well. One of the questions that was brought forward was with respect to how does a parent make a request for a courtesy seat? And so parents can request a courtesy seat by contacting STAO. STAO reviews the request, and the criteria that they apply are established based on the student living within the established boundary for the school. So the student is not a cross-boundary student. Is the parent requesting transportation for a school that is out of boundary? Is the child within the walk zone for the school? Are there any safety hazards or medical needs that need to be taken into consideration? Are there personal exceptional circumstances that have to be taken into consideration? And STEO will make the determination to provide or not provide access to a courtesy seat based on the application of those criteria. examples of current requests for courtesy seats, students who are within the walk zone, students who are attending a cross-boundary school and requesting a cross-boundary transportation to a cross-boundary school, medical considerations again, safety hazards, and personal exceptional circumstances. If STIO does not approve a cross-boundary seat, parents can appeal a decision, and the appeal is submitted through STIO. The general manager reviews and renders a final decision. The public concerns resolution policy of the Upper Canada School Board is then available in the event that parents are still not satisfied with the response that was given in the final decision by STIO. Since September 18th, the data that I have on the screen right there are the number of appeals that have come into us since the beginning of the school year as of September 18th. So we've had 73 appeals that have come forward. 32 of the appeals were for parents seeking transportation for their students to a school that is cross-boundary. 37 appeals were for parents who were requesting courtesy seat for students who lived within the walk zone of the school. 4 were for personal exceptional circumstances, and on that line, if you take a look, the math doesn't actually line up with the 73. One of those in the 4 was actually not even something that should have come through the appeal process. There was information missing, and STIO approved it once the information came forward, so that's why there's a bit of a discrepancy there. As of the 18th, 8 of the appeals had been approved, 50 had been denied, and there were 15 pending. And in the last few days, several more of those have been picked up. We have only had 2 additional appeals come through to us since September 18th. STIO has done some adjusting of bus size to match eligible ridership. So this one is we're hearing comments about buses that drive past a neighborhood that are half empty or appear to be half empty. And so there's been a refinement in the open seat process allowing STIO to make an adjustment to transportation commitments, so matching the bus size to eligible ridership. This provides significant cost savings and efficiencies by allowing a reduction in bus size, the kilometers that are being traveled, and it also provides the ability to double and triple routes through route optimization. So what does it mean to adjust a bus to match eligible ridership? Buses are sized for 20, 54, and 70 students. Currently, many of the bus operators have only larger size buses because it provides them an opportunity to use those buses for other things beyond just school transportation. So a scenario might be a bus that is costed for 20 students. If we add an additional student on a courtesy seat, it would require actually to cost it out for 54 students because the next size bus up is 54. So it's not just one seat, it's the addition of 34 additional seats and the costing that goes with that. So I've added a couple of links here to our transportation policy, which very clearly delineates that there is no busing for cross-boundary students, and that also we have established walk zones, and I've put the eligibility policy for STIO in here as well, which talks about the walk zones, which are aligned with our coterminous board as well as we are sharing the district transportation.
And I open. Trustees, it's open for questions. I'll begin with Trustee Wendy McPherson.
I wanted to just get some clarification. In your scenario where you give the 20 students, are you talking about a 54-seat bus that has 20 kids on it? And so we're being charged for a 20-seat bus.
Yes.
But it's a 54-seat
yes.
bus. Okay. And what's the difference between the cost of the 20 seats and the 54?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is an amount that I do not have, but that's information I certainly could find out if you wish me to.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Trustee Armour? Thank you.
Thank you for the update, Madam Chair. I appreciate that from Dion. I just have some concerns. So maybe we can go back to the slide where we talk about the number of escalations that have come through. I'm going to reference that. So typically, it makes sense that we're going to see some appeals because we were pretty liberal with what we were doing before, and we want to make some cost savings. So my question is twofold, if I may. How many complaints or escalations do we see in a given year where we wouldn't have the changes that we normally have seen? That's my first question. Maybe our superintendents or our director can answer that.
Director, would you?
So, Madam Chair, I'm going to ask Superintendent Ferguson to comment on that because he was in the school operation role last year, and Superintendent Coombs could also comment on that because he was in the operational role previous year. So we'll start with Superintendent Ferguson.
Through you, Chair. So to give you a number of the total would be difficult, in part because some of the appeals in the past would go directly to family of school superintendents who would make decisions based on their knowledge of the local area. And then in my role with school operations, some that were escalated beyond that level would come to me. So the number that came to my level was fewer than 10. But there were also some that would go to different avenues through STAO, and we didn't have as clear a process as we now have about how those should come in. Some requests went directly to principals of schools, and the principal would work with STAO to try to work something out. So our process, there was various different points where parents could contact to try to get a decision changed or to get a bus added. So we have those numbers now because everything is coming through STAO through one point of contact, and that's how we're able to give you such precise numbers. But I know in my role, I think it was 8 or 9 that I had that came all the way to my level that I had to look into and make a decision on.
Thank you. And so, obviously, we've increased quite a bit, and we're tracking better, that's fair.
Excuse me. Do you want Superintendent Coombs to comment at all, or?
No, I just need an amount, that's
Okay.
all. So I wanted to see the difference between last year versus this year. My concern more is around, I'm glad we got our appeals process sorted out, because the biggest concern for me as a trustee and representing parents and our constituents was the non-answer. And it wasn't just from our board, it was from STEO as well. So can I assure our constituents out there that we're addressing it in a timely manner? Because parents need to make an arrangements. If it is a no, and it looks like it's a resounding no.
Are you addressing it to
the director?
Okay.
Madam Chair, through you, I'll begin. We always endeavor to make sure that any parent contact is done in a timely manner so they can make decisions. We need to always provide the caveat as it depends on when the parents have contacted us. Where is that contact and concern expressed in the queue of having received that, and whether or not the parent has contacted multiple people, and that we may end up finding that a person is not being acted on in terms of their concern because it's being addressed at another level.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Trustee McPherson?
Just a housekeeping. Policy 100 for the STAO, it still has that the superintendent and principal of schools recommend the request to STAO and authorize the requests. So I don't know if you guys want to clean that up when you guys get there, because their policies aren't quite what we're saying in the STAO policies, or what parents are reading is not the same as what we're saying, and we could just get those things together. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, can I just,
Yeah,
I'm just writing this down, policy 101?
I have, it's policy 100.
100, okay, thank you very much.
Superintendent? Go ahead,
Through
please.
you, Madam Chair, I just want to clarify that there are some occasions still outside of this where some requests may come to the principal and to the superintendent. There's some things that aren't related to some of these particular ones. For instance, if you have a parent that changes where the child's being picked up, their daycare provider changes, that request wouldn't go through the formal appeals process, and it would still need a superintendent approval to go ahead and make that change. There would be still some times when those would come through us separate from this process.
Never mind.
Okay, the next person I have on the list is Trustee McDonald.
I have a couple of questions. When we look at the presentation, you talk about, on slide 9, should a bus costed for 20 students add an additional student, then the cost of operating the bus would then increase if required to operate 54 seats. Clarification, that's only if it's costed at 20 students and there's 20 students. If there's 18 students, you could add 2 students, and it's still...
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that is correct. There would be 2 seats. Now, STAO does keep a 10% I'll call it a buffer for the seats, because during the course of the school year there could be exceptional circumstances that arise that would lead to needing to have a student placed on a bus. Example of an exceptional circumstance might be that a family home burns down and the family has to relocate, and now that child will be accommodated on a bus for the interim. And also we have families who might move into certain areas, so there is a bit of a buffer that's built in.
Yep. So one of my frustrations in the report in June was that we had no cost associated to what was being proposed. It was an appearance to me that we fired the gun and tried to move the target afterwards. And I think here we are today, so many months afterwards, we understand that we've rolled out this process, and regardless of the number of appellants that have been there, I still see no costing. We talk in generalities of significant cost savings. We should know today what those cost savings are, and can we have those cost savings?
Yeah, just 2 parts to my answer. The first part is when the Board of Directors discussed the efficiencies, there was a specific cost given to us by the staff at Steele. So we knew up front. I believe it was initially it was in the area of $460,000 that was going to be the savings. So that I don't want to say I'd taken an exception that it was like a shot in the dark. It was not. There was clear evidence in terms of cost savings that were involved before the decision was made. So we did have that number. But I certainly will get more information on that for you. I think that what's happening right now is we're in the first month. The actual numbers in terms of the cost savings can't be calculated until usually the first month everything settles. But we certainly will get those numbers to you.
Follow up, Chair.
Go ahead.
And I appreciate your response, Mr. Chair, but when I asked the question specifically, nobody gave me the cost. Whether you knew it through STEO or not, no one provided that through our meeting that night. And that was very frustrating. It's very frustrating tonight to know that it was no one. I would hope that after so many weeks of adjusting right now, that we have an idea of the number of buses that have been eliminated or at least reduced. We should know based on route optimization, because I mean it's simple. We know how many kids were impacted. We know how many buses are going to be impacted. We're a month into the system right now. We should have an idea of what those dollars are, and that's, I think, a very frustrating piece for me to know that we made a change in a hope to achieve something, but we still don't know whether we achieved it.
Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, may I respond, please? I'm not sure if we gave you these figures, and if we didn't, we should have. But the removal of the courtesy seats was estimated. The overall savings was $493,013.
Okay, $490,000?
$493,013. That was to be generated from the following efficiencies. First one was the removal of the courtesy seats, which was $192,840. And there were 540 letters sent. The second one was the removal of out of boundary, which we didn't deal with because we decided not to. So does that answer your question, Dave?
No, because I still don't know what the cost is today, what the savings are today.
And I believe we had that answer from Trustee McMillan, that he would get it and get back to us on it.
And I might add, too, there's one other. The walk policy change implemented from grades 7 to 8 up to 2 kilometers was expected to generate savings of $92,000. And you can well imagine, Trustee McDonald, that the actual cost, the actual savings might be hard to arrive at as we are still in the first month of school.
Next
Correct.
speaker, the next speaker I have on my list is Trustee Swan.
I guess I just wanted to clarify, through you, Chair, is, you say cross-boundary, but I'm sorry, Trustee McAllister just said, what weren't we addressing?
The out-of-boundary.
So, but we're talking cross-boundary here, so I'm just a bit confused. Could someone clarify that?
The out-of-boundary.
About
The
courtesy
out-of-boundary.
seats, we're addressing cross-boundary there.
Well, the difference between cross-boundary, I guess, and out-of-boundary. We decided not to address the out-of-boundary issue. We asked, that efficiency was pulled. We didn't address that one.
Superintendent Perry or Ferguson, go ahead.
Just to provide clarification for you, that is a question we get quite often. What Trustee McAllister was saying is that there's students that are outside of our district, right, out of our boundary completely, and then there are students that are just going cross-boundary inside. So this is a boundary for the school and they go, and so we were addressing the ones that were within our district where they've gone, but not the ones that were outside of it.
Okay, secondary?
Go ahead.
So in regards to students attending cross-boundary schools seeking transportation to the cross-boundary school, is there an appeal mechanism for, I've brought this up before, for institutions such as daycares to have a reconsideration of this, of the decisions? Because it gives us an unfair, actually, market for students, because the rules are going to affect us. Let's say, for example, in Kemptville, where we have two schools. It wasn't an issue when we had an English school and an immersion school, but now we have two immersion schools, so we're enforcing the boundary tighter, and yet the Catholic board only has one school. So anyone that lives in North Granville can go to the Catholic school, and anyone at any daycare in North Grenville can go to the Catholic school. But people that go to the daycares in North Grenville are being forced to go to the school that their daycare is in the area of. You see where I'm coming from here? Like, what mechanism? I have talked to Superintendent Coombs and hoping to get a meeting set up, but I'm just, like, I just want to convey to you and John that it's not a fair advantage for our board, especially in this circumstance, and I don't doubt there might be others in other areas where there's only one Roman Catholic school and we have two schools with the same programming. And so it's only affecting our parents and not the parents of children attending the Catholic schools.
So you've noted that?
I have.
Okay. All right, moving on to Trustee Armour.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. So, out of the 73 appeals, have we lost kids? Has our enrollment gone down? Because it seems counter to me that if we're saving $500,000 and we've lost 50 kids, it's kind of a minute point to continue on with making these challenging decisions. So, I don't know if we can get an update on enrollment. It's going to be hard to say, unless the parents come out and directly say, I'm leaving, I'm going somewhere else. But I'd like an update if we
I'm
can get
going
one.
to call on the director to
Perfect.
answer this.
Madam Chair, through you, at this moment, we don't have any confirmation of whether the process has led to losing students or whether we're up students just through our global enrollments for our projections for this year. We do our snapshot, of course, quite frequently during the staffing process when we're trying to confirm class caps that we've met that obligation. But right now, we're really waiting to October 31st. And then at that point, then we would be able to confirm whether or not projected enrollments and who's shown up at our schools or not has materialized. Whether or not we can attribute to some students who didn't attend is hard to say. It's really important that we can confirm that in a different time, when the trustees were considering school closures, we had received many comments from families that if schools were closed, that families were considering their option about attending elsewhere. we have to respect that families make choices. Sometimes it's about service, sometimes it's about a proximity of schooling, and sometimes it's about other principles that they have. In that particular case, we didn't experience change. And in some cases where, individual cases where parents and families chose to leave, they did come back. So it's really hard to say, but we will keep an eye on that. And if we see any kind of trending that we think might be related to transportation-related change, we'll be sure to bring that back as part of our report that we do in January to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Trustee McPherson, Bill McPherson?
Thank you. I want to raise some concerns. What I'm hearing from my constituents is the cone of silence. They feel they're being stonewalled. I have one parent that has waited almost a month for any kind of response from Steel. When we look at our board functioning as a public service entity, that personally does not meet my standard. They need to have acknowledgement of some sort, even if it's generic, that we have heard you and we are acting upon your request. And I've heard this repeatedly. I realize that we do not direct Steel, but I find it odd that the only one that is responding to these people is myself. And I have to walk very thin ice in doing so. I also question the rationale behind this. Are we doing this for efficiency in operations, or are we doing it to save money for future commitments? I think we need to come clean with our communities as to what is driving this. It is impacting, in most cases, our most vulnerable students, the kindergarten students that weren't in the system last year. They may qualify for transportation based upon their home address, but you have two working parents, and guess what? The daycare is within the walk zone. I also caution you against false economies. In the farming business, when you get short of money, you quit buying grass seed. You suffer short-term gain for long-term pain. For a good example, in my ward, where I have one Catholic school, I have 6 public schools. So we have 6 different transportation zones, and we have one transportation zone for the co-terminus board. A student that's refused transportation to one school can easily get it by switching schools. And so I guess I don't have a question, because most of the questions that I had, okay, I will ask the one that hasn't been answered yet. When you put a student onto a bus as a result of an appeal for a courtesy, if you trip the switch on the bus numbers, does the cost of that bus go up by the entire amount? In other words, if you go from a 54-seat bus to a 70, and allowing yourself for some flexibility, but if you trip the switch, for the sake of one student, does it go up the whole amount because it's a courtesy placement? Courtesy placement's being based upon extenuating circumstances. So I'll direct the question through the chair, and they can send it where they want.
Director?
Madam Chair, through you, we have researched that with STAO, and they have advised us that the approximate cost of that switch flipping would be about $20,000.
Okay, so we have more figures. 20,000 from a 54 to a 70.
Trustee McAllister, you're next on my list.
Okay. I have considerable sympathy for some of the questions, frankly. I guess when we look at a policy, we have to take a look at the perception of that policy, and is it fair? And For the most part, I think it is, although it's impossible to address 100% of the clientele. And the other thing is, does it make sense? And sometimes it doesn't make sense whenever we have a bus going by that could take one or two or three more, and that's, Trustee McDonald, I'd like to investigate that a bit further. I mean, if we have we have a 20-passenger bus with 18 students on it, notwithstanding the tolerance level, but let's say we have a margin of 2, then could we take 2 more? Question is, yes, we probably could, but what about the other 8 whom we're not able to pick up as a result? So therefore, it sort of negates the whole concept of the efficiency. But in terms of, there are 3 exemptions to this, and one is medical considerations, the other is safety hazards or personal exceptional circumstances. My first question is with regard to medical conditions and the personal exemption circumstances have been addressed very well in my experience by superintendents with whom I deal. I have no question, I'm sure everybody's doing the same. The second one, though, is the one of safety hazards. And I mean, parents say, well, I just don't want my kids on the street. Is that a good reason? Is that a safety hazard? If there are school crossing guards, etc., that is an issue that we have to deal with. And just the final comment with regard to poor communication, I'm not going to comment on that, but I have heard it, and it's something I think that Jeff and I will be bringing to the STAO meeting next month. Anyway, if anybody can comment on the safety issue with regard to, I just don't really want my kid on the street, I'd like an answer to that. What can we say?
Superintendent.
We defer to STAO to determine what safety hazards are, because they have the training to be able to make a definition of what a safety hazard is, and therefore we are going to be respecting what their determinations are.
Thank you. Next I have Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. I think just to follow up on Trustee McAllister's point, I think it would be nice to see how many buses did we have at 72, 54, and 20, and what did we downgrade to, right? How many 72s were brought down to 54 or 20, whatever the case might be. And that would certainly help some of that. What I wanted to address on this one, though, was anytime that we as an organization or our external bodies do something, there's an opportunity to reflect and to see some improvements. And that's what I want to address right now. I think there's an opportunity for us to provide some feedback to our directors to go back to STEO. And I think the opportunity, in my view, is that how things are communicated out to parents when a change is made. And I think an important piece that I don't see within the policies or within the framework is that if we are, STEO and or the board is going to implement changes, either from a walk zone, a change in out of boundaries, anything that would impact an adjustment to that transportation, we should see something, a plan in place to see how that is going to roll out. Like, we have to be able to say that if it's June 1st, it's too late. We need to make sure that changes are done prior to June 1st so that it can be communicated to parents, that it can be communicated to schools effectively, and then we have that plan in place. Similar to what we would do if we were looking at changing our own boundaries or closing schools. And that, I know that there's no legislation that says that, but it would be nice if we were able to do that in such a way that they start a process to find efficiencies and then have that communication plan built into it so that it's rolled out and communicated with the stakeholders that are impacted or affected. The other thing I think that needs to be looked at or reviewed is the policies within STEO when it talks about, and my screen just went off, when it talks about appeal process. The appeal process policy is pretty silent. It says that there is one. Student Transportation of Eastern Ontario provides a process where parents and guardians can identify their transportation concerns. And what's lacking is what the process is. And so I think if you're going to say that there is a process, you need to be able to demonstrate what that is for people so that they know where to go. It may not relieve all frustrations, but it may help in some situations. At least people would understand that when I call this person, I know that what the next step is. And then the last piece would be around just reflecting on how we track certain things. It would be ideal, whether it's through STEO or through our board, that we have a tool of sort, whether it's built into some of the software programs that we may have, to track these types of concerns so that we know some positions change on a regular basis. So you may have one responsibility this year, but next year you may have a different responsibility. And I'm not saying that, I'm kind of being facetious, but in any event, but at least there's an opportunity to track those conversations or those types of complaints so that one year to the next we understand that we've already had that conversation so that we can follow up on it and we aren't reinventing the wheel to try and address a particular issue with a stakeholder. And then that might also be able to eliminate some of those processes because people would know then that I'm just going to try again because I might get a different person or I might get a different answer. So I think that those kinds of things might help us in the future when we look at those types of things. I'm not suggesting that we have to hard fast do that today, but I think there's an opportunity to have some further discussion and make some reflection associated to that.
Okay, thank you. You want a question about that?
Just through you, Chair, I want to thank you for that. What that is constructive in terms of where steel goes next because, as the transportation costs rise, and they will, organizations like steel or consortiums across the province are going to have to look at the efficiencies. And I think you're right on when you talk about the need to communicate effectively the impact and make sure that everyone involved clearly understands the process. And then we have to internally be able to track. So I thank you for that positive side of it because the intentions were very clear and very sound at the time. It's only when you get into something like this you start to see the impacts beyond the cost savings. And I can assure you that both Trustee McAllister and I want to see the efficiency and the way it moves out in now and in the future to be as best as it can be. And that only comes from positive things like that. So I thank you for that. So I've got those down for sure.
All right, I have three more speakers, Trustee McPherson, Wendy, Trustee Armour, and Trustee Bill McPherson. So if it's possible, maybe we'll wrap it up and ask our directors to have a final conversation if they wish. But I'll go to Wendy McPherson now, please.
So help me out here. What's going on with the motion?
Right now, you haven't got a motion forward yet, but you can.
You can.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'd like to bring that motion forward so I can speak to it. Is that what I do? Need help here.
Do I have the motion?
I know I need a seconder.
All right. The motion that I have in front of me is written by Trustee Wendy McPherson. And it states, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees directs its two directors on STEO's board, Jeff McMillan and John McAllister, to bring forth this motion to rescind STEO policies to halt courtesy riders out of boundary and out of district students from no longer having busing. And she needs a seconder for this before we can even discuss it. Any seconder for this motion? Trustee McDonald? Just for clarification, Director, do we have a discussion on this motion, or is it something that carries to a further meeting?
No, it will be discussed, Madam Chair, here at the table.
All right, so I'll let Wendy speak to her motion.
Thank you.
Trustee McPherson, sorry.
There are several reasons for me bringing this motion forward tonight. But let me be clear, this motion no way reflects the great job and dedication the two trustees that sit on the STEO committee do for us. On reviewing the June 6th meeting where the Board of Trustees received the policy changes at the STEO, from STAO, I noted. This was touted as a saving exercise, but no amounts were given other than for every yellow bus off the road is a savings of $55,000. And that was divulged only after a trustee asked what the savings would be. So throughout our presentations, no costs were ever noted. We were also informed in the PowerPoint that 871 students would be affected. Surprisingly, there was a letter home before trustees were even aware of the busing disruption. A fait accompli has been said to me in calls that I received, angry calls, by the way. By the numbers, we have learned this September there is a savings of $420,000, and that was directly from the STAO's director, Tracy Murphy, I think her name. $240,000 divided by 55,000, which is the savings for the yellow bus off the road. That equals 7.6 buses off the roads. Now, I'm only going by the numbers that I could find. It's difficult to get anything in numbers. Lots of adjectives, but no solid numbers. So I'm doing my best with this efficiencies as I can. We've learned that the 240 divided by the 55 buses equals 6.7 buses off the road. By that same math, if you take $240,000 divided by the 871 students that receive letters, that equals a savings of $482 per student on busing. Now, we get approximately $11.50 per student from the government. If we divide 420,000, which is that savings that we're talking about, by the amount we get per student, 11,500, which gives us 36 students. So, we could lose all the savings if we lose 36 students who leave for another board. I know we lost 2 who had called me and told me they were gone. That's over $20,000 gone for a savings of $964. We know there are 50 appeals. We know there were 50 appeals that have been denied, with 15 pending. And there were over 1,300 calls to STAO. So this isn't lost on anyone. I'm saying if we lose 34 more students because of this enforcement, we won nothing. We saved nothing, and it appears to be trying to stop people from getting a public education. And worse yet, it looks like we don't care. That's what I'm hearing. But what about the argument that we need to demonstrate to the province we are looking for savings? I strongly think we have already demonstrated that resolve by closing schools in 2016 and still are closing schools today as per the PAR plan. We've demonstrated we're about efficiencies, and we went through hell for it. The issue of having STAO deal and speak to the parents about busing issues and appeals is and has regretfully damaged Upper Canada District School Board in ways that are not going to be easy to repair. Maybe we should have had a clear mechanism for the board to deal with parents' busing issues and not assume STAO has our best interest for our students. They're not a public relations group. They're a consortium to deal with busing. Not parents and their children and the loss of their transportation. I'm very concerned about the message we are given when we will pick up a 4- and 5-year-old but close the door on the 8- and 10-year-old and are told, sorry guys, those are the rules, start walking, when there are clearly seats on the bus. Now, granted, I don't know how many seats are on the bus, but that is something that we need to be looking at. We should be trying to get students in our classrooms. And if that means using every seat on the bus, then let's do it. Because we have paid for the buses, not the seats. Not all students do well in their local schools. And for whatever reason, we should be helping parents and students get a safe and fulfilling education in our schools, be it one that is outside their school zone or not. Now, I'm not saying every student gets a bus. That's not what I'm saying here. But where possible, when there is a seat available, let's fill it with a student who requests it. Like we have in the past. Large buses, 54 or 700, 54 seats to 700 are the norm at our bus companies. I'm hurt by the fact that we're only putting up the 20-seat buses, and we don't even know how many seats in our 54 are filled or our 70 are filled. There's a real lack of information for us here, and we're damaging serious damages to our reputation and where our kids are going. If busing costs go up, then the province needs to pay up. Bottom line for me. Order school boards to do something else. But until that happens, why do we have to inconvenience 871 students? We are closing schools. We are finding efficiencies. And if cost of busing is going up, then let's see it and allow parents to see what we are forced to deal with. Nowhere does it say we have to make the province look good and save them money, or anticipate we will win favor with the province if we stop busing students. Lastly, the $420 saving does not go back to the board. We don't get to spend it on special education or EA salaries or building new schools or even repairing the old ones. It's $420,000 the province doesn't give us next year. And I hope you guys can take that back to them and see with the other Catholic board that they also will see that this isn't a big savings. However, they're the winners in this deal, and we're the ones that are hurting. Thank you.
Okay, we have the seconder. Did you want to speak to the motion?
I do, Madam Chair. I wanted to talk. I did second it only for the sake of I wanted to be able to have the discussion around the courtesy riders, those kinds of things, and giving some direction to our directors to go back to steel. Although I did second it, I wanted to put it out that potentially I'd like to make some adjustments if I could, because what hasn't been addressed is the out of district and out of boundary thus far, and the only thing that has been impacted was the courtesy riders and the increased walking distance. From a personal perspective, I think the courtesy rider program was a beneficial one. It helped us in many ways. I understand the difficulties around steel having to modernize and become effective and efficient, because that's the guidelines that the province gives. But I think there's an opportunity for us to go back and have further conversation at steel with our directors to see what the impact would be if we were to have that rescinded. And I think if that's the opportunity that we have out of this, at least then we can make a further discussion. So if I may put the mover, that we would remove the words out of boundary and out of district and just deal strictly with courtesy riders, and that we would direct our directors to bring this motion forward to steel about courtesy riders and the impact if we were to go back to previous practice prior to September 1st. And then that would come back to the board through the directors or through staff. Would you be willing to accept that as a friendly motion?
That.
Okay. Did you get that?
So that to bring forth this motion to rescind steel policies, to halt courtesy riders, and then scratch out of...
To allow courtesy riders and scratch the rest.
Yeah. So it would be a report back on the impact of allowing that to happen again. And scratch out of boundary and out of
districts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, go ahead.
To Trustee McDonald's point, that you're absolutely right. We can go back and bring that to steel, but what we need to know is what is the impact. By the time we have our steel meeting, we will be 1 month into this. And we need to know what impact that would have if we were to go back. It may be better to look at what's going to happen in the future as opposed to trying to turn the table back on something that has already been rolling for a month.
But on that same, you need to know how many students you've lost, so you really could justify, are we making money, or are we saving money, or are we losing money on the back end? That's my worry.
All right, I'm going to continue with the people who are speaking to this motion, not the list I had before. So Trustee Bill McPherson?
Thank you. I have to remind you that the walking distances are a board policy, and they are over a decade old. What has changed is the degree of enforcement. And you either say 0 busing zone for everyone, or you decide to adhere to your policy. And I'm going to remind you of the fact that we represent a board that is projecting a $1.8 million deficit for last year, unless that's changed and I haven't heard about it. We are subsidizing special education by $8 million. And both those numbers pale in comparison to what I have heard about transportation. I'm not going to reveal any privy information, but if we go back to the province for money, especially given our current political environment, the first thing they're going to say to you is, what efficiencies have you sought in transportation? And they will see a board that is not even abiding by their own walking distance policy. And yes, I feel for the students that are, I think one of the misconceptions here is we are not asking students to walk to school. What we are saying is that we do not provide transportation within these zones. A kindergarten student is not being asked to walk to school. What is being said is the parent is responsible to put that child to the classroom. The same as that same parent is responsible for putting that child on the school bus when they live within a school bus zone. So,
I'm sorry, that's not true.
pardon?
That's not true. They're not picking up kindergarten. I got 3, 4 in Maxwell. They're not being picked up 4 or 5.
No, I'm not going to debate the issue, but I cannot support the motion.
All right, is there anyone else that wants to speak to the motion that is now on the overhead or screen, I should say?
Any changes?
No.
Can you get the new motion ready, just so, because I think trustee...
It's up here.
Yeah, I think Wendy's still going on the old motion.
Yeah.
Be it resolved that the Upper Canada District School Board of Trustees direct its 2 directors on the Student Transportation of Eastern Ontario Steel Board, Jeff McMillan and John McAllister, to bring forth this motion to determine the impact if we were to rescind steel policy to allow courtesy riders, and to report back to the board the outcome of that discussion. Is that the motion? All right. That has changed just a little bit from the other one, definitely. Any more comments on the motion before we take the vote? Trustee Armour?
Just a point of clarification. When would we hear back?
Good point.
Your next meeting's October
5th, I believe.
So next week? Next week?
Just so you're-
Go ahead.
I believe it's early October, 4th, 5th.
Okay.
But for us to ask for the impact at that meeting, they're not going to provide it, or may not be able to provide it for us at that point. It'd be like us, but they will have it.
Okay.
They may, I'm just saying.
No, I know. I would push them.
Well, I certainly can push. No, I will push,
Okay.
but it'd be like us asking one of our superintendents, can you tell us this? And they go, ooh.
Could we have a request ahead of time? I'm just trying. Okay, good.
If they can calculate it at that point, because remember, the dust is still settling.
Oh, I know.
But we certainly will ask.
I'm not. Just a point of clarification. I sat in a meeting, in a PIC meeting with them, and they knew their numbers very well.
Yep.
I'd be surprised if they couldn't calculate it fairly quickly.
Just a question.
Go ahead, Trustee McPherson.
The school board elections are October 22nd. Are we going to get into I guess I'll call it jurisdictional problem here, given that 6 out of 10 of our trustees are up for election? We have 1 fresh acclamation coming on. So that's over 70% of our board. Is there any legal barricade to what we're proposing to do? I know with municipal council it's called lame duck status. I've been assured that it does not apply to school boards, but this is a pretty significant direction. And
Directors, do you have any comments about the legalities here?
I have a question for the Secretary of the Board. In that, since where do Trustee McMillan and I stand on this vote, since we are named in the motion?
Madam Chair, through you, it may be a moot point because you've already mentioned the directors of the Student Transportation of Eastern Ontario. So whether the names of the trustees are listed or not is immaterial. I think in this case it's just being clear that in the motion you're identifying who is currently responsible for that and subsequently who would be providing that back to the board versus any other person who may be seen as a director. So the board does know that we have 2 directors on STAO. It's not necessary to name the people, but the mover would have to agree that that would be a friendly amendment that you'd want to accommodate.
I think the question was, do they vote?
There is no conflict, I don't believe, Madam Chair, because they're still members of the board.
Trustee McPherson, to the motion?
you're bringing forth this motion to determine the impact if we rescind Steele's policy to allow courtesy riders is not the issue of disallowing courtesy riders. And is
not
it,
allow courtesy
is it
riders.
Steele policy or is it our policy? And
So,
like this.
Trustee McPherson, do you want to respond to that?
Is it our? No, yeah, it should read to determine the impact if we were to rescind Steele's policy to not allow courtesy riders, because right now it's not allowing, right?
with exceptions.
Go ahead, you're seconder.
So the motion has changed somewhat, because the original motion was to direct Steele to stop and revert back.
Yes.
And that was very clear direction to stop doing something and continue old practice or prior practice. What this motion is saying is we need further information. So what if we were to stop and go to the old practice of allowing courtesy riders, what is that impact? And that's what we, I mean, I think from a board standpoint, do we want to, that would be very difficult for a board that's moving out to not know the impact on a decision that we're making if we directed a body to do something without knowing the full cost associated to it. So what this is doing is determining if we revert back, we lost potential savings, but what is that cost associated to it? And I think that's the important piece if we were to continue to do courtesy riders. If the cost comes back that it's now going to cost, we thought we were going to save $400,000, but now it's going to cost us $300,000 to do that. That's a decision that we could make potentially. Or if it comes back and it's going to be $600,000 to go to the old practice, then we have another decision to make. We want to do that, and I think that's why it's evolved a little bit. Is that we need further information before we conduct a direct order to say stop doing something.
Okay, Trustee McPherson and then McMillan.
Okay. School ABC has 44 students within the walking zone. We currently have an appeal, and this school exists, I just didn't want to name it. We currently have an appeal by 2 of the 3 concerned parents. The third parent has made other arrangements. So does Steele have the capacity that if we were to eliminate the walk zones for school ABC, what percentage of that 44 students will all of a sudden avail themselves of a school bus?
Just for clarification, we're not talking walk zones here.
Yeah.
We're just talking.
You're talking about eliminating the policy of walk zones?
No, just courtesy riders.
Not in this
Courtesy
motion.
riders, courtesy riders are those students who are granted a school bus within a walk zone.
That would be what
So
we'd have to
if you
investigate.
have 44 students that are currently in that walk zone that are not availing themselves of a school bus service, and then all of a sudden you say, we'll give it to those two, what guarantee have you got that you would not get 42 more?
Okay, Trustee McMillan?
Through you, Chair, to your point, and I certainly agree with that, and that's hypothetical, but it would also be hypothetical for CEO to try to answer that. You're talking 44. I mean, my neighborhood, it could be potentially 100 would say, well, if they do, then they do. And it's not that we want to deny anyone who has a legitimate case. And I think that's the important thing here, is there's a lot of students who really could benefit from walking to school. There are some who have challenges, and those challenges, perhaps the response has not been quick enough, but they have a legitimate argument. My concern, it goes along with yours. When you open the door, you open the door to anything that could happen. That's not to say that we won't take this back and ask that question, but that's the hypothetical. What happens with the 4 who appealed it? Now you've got another 100 are going, just a second here. Then you start saying, well, those, but not, it becomes very problematic.
So can you not take this question back without putting the board to a vote on it?
Director?
So, Madam Chair, I'm going to put my Secretary of the Board hat on here. So we had a motion that was seconded for discussion. During the discussion, there was a offer to, or a recommendation to amend, a friendly amendment, and it's been amended. And if I understand, the gist of the amendment was, and this is where maybe the clarification is required at this point, to allow courtesy riders writ large, so no walk zones, or to allow courtesy riders as per the 17-18 process. So in other words, for STAO to go back and say, so if we were to continue where it was last year, what would be now the cost? Because there was a projected cost that was shared by Trustee McAllister, and now we're asking about, well, what are the actual costs? So given all the requests of people who brought forward a request to have a ride, what would have been those costs? And so therefore, what are the savings? So I think, Madam Chair, my recommendation to you to consider is, based on the amendment that's there, one of two things. Either vote on the amendment and then further the conversation of what's starting to surface now, or if people are comfortable with the amendment, to vote on the motion. So, Madam Chair, question number 1, to hold the conversation steady so that the motion doesn't continue to transpose into different states, to confirm whether or not trustees want to vote on this motion, the amended motion, that they accept the amended motion as amended, and then continue the conversation that was just raised by Trustee McPherson, or if the board feels that the motion is in the proper state, to vote on the motion as is.
All right. So we have a friendly amendment in front of us. Does the board feel that we need to vote on that friendly amendment to move it forward?
No, not yet.
Trustee McPherson?
Yeah. No, I don't. I think we're getting a little caught up in a lot of hypotheticals and what have you. Yes, we need to get some real information because I'm very frustrated by how we're not getting information. We're not getting numbers. It's been a month now. We're gonna and let's see where we are really going. But how did we do it before?
Okay.
Are these 73 people?
You're
all
not
alone?
answering my question.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
Director?
So, Madam Chair, just so that in case there is any questions, my recommendation to you is to call a vote on the amendment as there, and to see if you have a consensus. Then continue to have dialogue about whether or not you want to pass the motion.
Oh, okay.
So step number one, calling the question to see whether people accept the amendment, and then dialogue, further dialogue to see if there's any other questions, and then call the question about whether people accept the motion.
Okay. So I'm calling the question on the amendment. Are we accepting of the amendment as stated on the motion posted?
I'm in favor.
Do we need just a hand motion? Show of hands enough? So who's in favor of the motion as it is posted? 1, 2, 3, 4. Are you up or down?
I'm down.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Are there 6 of us?
It's
There's
five.
7 of us? So we win.
1, 2, 3.
No, there's no 3 there.
1, 2,
3,
3, 4. 4.
Okay. Opposed?
3.
And I didn't vote, so I have to vote. No? Yes?
No, yes.
Trustee Jacobs cast a vote?
Yep.
Yes.
He was in
Okay.
favor.
So we're proceeding to the motion now. All right, the motion reads as posted. We'll take that to Steel for discussion and some feedback from that.
More information, yeah.
All right, so all in favor of the motion to take it forward?
So you would vote electronically?
Electronic vote on this one, please.
Are you allowing discussion on this at this point?
I guess I should, eh? Yeah, okay,
You
so
want
it's
to
still,
vote there for a second?
I'm going to back up while she,
Point of order.
we're not going to vote on it just yet. We need to have a discussion.
Discussion.
Point of order.
Call a point of order, trustee
Yes,
McPherson?
please. And I'll have to refer this to our parliamentarian. It is my understanding that an abstention counts the same as a negative vote. And in that case, we have a tie vote.
I believe Jeff McMillan was opposed. He said opposed.
What?
He said opposed, not abstain.
Who?
Jeff.
Okay, you still have a tied vote. An abstention counts under the parliamentary procedure that we use, which I believe is AIP.
I know that's for Robert
An
rules.
abstention counts as a negative. Therefore,
We'll check, Madam Chair. Well, we believe it's not, but we'll confirm. So, Madam Chair, in our AIP, it says a member has the right to abstain from voting on any motion and must abstain from voting if the member has a financial interest or conflict of interest in the outcome of the vote. When a member must abstain from voting because of a conflict of interest, the majority of legal votes cast is not required, as not a requirement to adopt a proposal or elect a person to office. The organization must make clear in its bylaws the vote that is required to adopt a proposal. So it's silent there. An abstention is not considered a vote and is therefore not counted in determining the result.
okay, thank you.
So we are now discussing the motion that is going forward. So I'm opening it up for discussion. No further discussion on this motion. Go ahead, trustee McAllister.
I'm just going to predicate my remarks by saying that whatever happens, we'll do what you tell us to do, because that's what we are elected to do. We will be bringing forth your concerns. But as far as this particular motion is concerned, I really have to speak against it. Efficiencies are never easy, and I think we have done a great deal of work to make it as fair as possible and to accommodate and exempt where absolutely feasible. So I am certainly in favor of refining the policy and improving the communications and all the things that you mentioned and getting the figures, etc. But I'm having some difficulty with this because we have an existing board policy, not to speak of state policy, which we have modified only a little bit, and which we perhaps in the past were not enforcing as much as we should have. And that the whole issue of courtesy riders, for example, is contingent or predicated on two things. One, the availability of space, has always been, and the second one is contingent upon parents reapplying for a courtesy seat on a yearly basis. Once given, it is not a fait accompli for forever. So we have made some corrections to past practice. Anyway, I think it's important that we look at projected cost savings, etc. But as it stands, I really have to vote against this motion.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the vote, and it'll be screen for us. I do not need to read it again, do I, or do I have to read it into the books? All right, motion moved by Wendy McPherson, second by David McDonald, and resolved that the Upper Canada District School Board of Trustees directs its two directors on the Student Transportation of Eastern Ontario's board, Jeff McMillan and John McAllister, to bring forth this motion to rescind steel policies. Bill, that's not the motion.
No, that was the initial motion?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, we're voting on the amended motion.
Yes. Sorry. When I got
It's good that we read it, Madam Chair.
Yes, you're right.
While we do that, can I just add something?
I called the question.
Yeah, there's no rescind in this one.
No.
So, right. So that was the amended one. So now we're voting on this one. No, we're not voting on that. We're just voting on this. So they voted on that too, that they agree with the amendment. And they're voting actually to the motion. So they voted to approve the amendment. Now they're voting on the motion. So you want to cut that, paste it in there. Yeah, and so then, yeah, because they approved the motion, or they approved the amendment. Actual motion, right? So approve the amendment.
36 seconds, 16 seconds. Five.
Is that it there?
All right, I'll continue on, or do I start again, Director?
Start again, Madam Chair.
Moved by Wendy McPherson and seconded by David McDonald, be it resolved that the Upper Canada District School Board of Trustees directs its two directors on the Steel Board, Jeff McMillan and John McAllister, to bring forth this motion to determine the impact if we were to allow courtesy riders, and to report back to the board the outcome of that discussion. Cast your votes. The results are
4-4.
4-4. So in the event of a tie, the wording in our document is?
So, Madam Chair, a tie vote on a motion means the same number of members have voted in the affirmative as in the negative. Since a majority vote or more than half the legal votes cast is required to adopt a motion, an equal or tie vote means the motion is defeated.
Can I just make maybe a greater?
I really tried.
We will still be bringing forward
You would.
the intent
This
of
is,
the motion.
the motion is defeated, but my understanding is that the directors will take the comments that have been made tonight back to Steo.
Definitely.
And I'm sure this will be brought up in those discussions.
And we will have a report in as timely a fashion as possible.
Oh,
Thank you.
Trustee Counselor.
All right, so, from Trustee Armour?
Just a point from our secretary. Are we able to discuss some other things that we might bring forward?
Yes, I'm going back to where we were. And you're on my list right now.
So do we need, is it the consortium's prerogative to track our appeals, or is it something that we need to do at the board table according to our policy? Seeing as they do work with us and for us, I don't know if someone can tell us that. Okay.
Okay, so you'll take that back as well? I had Bill.
But before that, I'd like, if I can further that.
Go ahead.
It's great to find it out, but we need a mechanism in place, and whether they do it or we do it, that's something that we need to put in place. I'm fully behind Trustee McDonald's for that.
It's noted
And I
here.
think that's the next step
That's
once
fair.
we get the feedback. Trustee Bill McPherson.
Just, I guess, a comment. In the Smith Falls community and other communities, they've adopted some very successful walking school bus programs in conjunction with the local health unit. In Smith Falls, it was largely as a result of the opening of the new St. Francis School within the Juneau Catholic. I wonder if this is information that we could gather and share with our schools that are in more urban communities. Like, I know nobody's thought of it in Perth. If we have similar situations in other municipalities, perhaps we could share that information with them. It's not a board-driven thing. It's not even school-based. It's community-based. And it's proven quite successful in Smith Falls. And just a comment.
Superintendent Perry, do you want to comment on walking school buses?
Through you, Madam Chair, we do have some of our schools looking at walking school buses at this point, and a few other of our school communities are looking at it as well.
Yes, okay. So, before the discussion on the motion, I had given the permission for the two to speak, and my list is exhausted, so I'm going to move it over to the two directors and see if they wish to put any closing remarks forward at this point. Trustee McMillan?
I just want to repeat what Trustee McAllister said. Even though the motion did not pass, that does not change the fact that both he and I will take the concerns, all of the concerns that I have on my plate in front of me. The concerns, some of them are questions, looking for answers. We can get those to you. Trustee McDonald, your concerns in terms of communication policy, and the other one that both you and Trustee Elmer talked about in terms of tracking the concerns or tracking the appeals. So all of that information we will take back, and I want the trustees to know that we have listened, and that we're very concerned, as any of us would be. But transportation is a challenge and will continue to be a challenge. But as we move forward, we need to do better at our business. Not necessarily here at the board level, although I'm sure we do here as well, but at STEO as well. So I can assure you that we will be taking this information back. Okay.
Trustee McAllister, do you have one? Trustee McAllister, you already said what you wanted to say.
Yes, I have.
Okay. So thank you for that discussion, and I will now turn the chair back to Chair McMillan.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for doing that for me as well. Okay, moving over to the next is a report from SEAC. I'll do that after the SEAC because I think SEAC won't be 15 minutes. Or will it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Once again, we met on, let's see, find the date here. September 11th, and actually we met in the boardroom here. We welcome a new superintendent that night. I see he skipped out on me. Ron Ferguson, heard you back there somewhere. We just get a superintendent slapped into place when you give us a new one to play with. So anyways, the first thing we had was a association report from Mike Stanley from the Brockville and District Association of Community Inclusion, and it was essentially a presentation on their study, If Inclusion Means Everyone, Why Not Me? The link is provided here. SEAC did have some concerns about the sample size, and we did not feel it was large enough to warrant a motion to the board. Kimberly did indicate that the local association is going to move ahead with it. As well, we had some staff reports from on PBIS. Can't remember what that acronym means. Catherine Winston, and census support teacher. And this program essentially focuses on the child's positive behavior, not the negative. And Michael Law gave us a quick update on the education funding update, and it means a small increase for SEAC, and that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments or questions? Seeing there are none, looking at the time, I know that we have one more item on the regular agenda, and we have several items in private, so I'm looking for a motion to extend the meeting beyond 10 o'clock to 10:30. Trustee Bill McPherson, a seconder. Trustee Karkner, just a show of hands, please. Thank you very much. Director, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Chair, trustees, this is an opportunity for the staff to bring to your attention the update of the director's work plan. At our last meeting on 12 September, we had an opportunity to provide you with the outcome from the 17-18 plan. I wanted to respect the time we have this evening, and recognize that we also need to bring back a more fulsome report to the board, which includes the action items for the plan. But allow me just for a brief few minutes to walk you through what we have in front of us. On page 1 inside the plan, the theme of the director's work plan for this coming year is building on success. The board will recall that the work plan that the board has set out for itself, while ambitious, is seeking to go deeper into the key focus that they had about grad rates, wellness, engaging staff, and building connections with community. And our work plan also reflects those developments as well. If you turn the page to item number 1, which is the goal number 1, increase graduation rates by 2%. It was our sincere pleasure to present to the board 2 weeks ago that as we closed off the last work plan, that we had moved the graduation rate from 84% to 86%, and now our next threshold is 88%. At our meeting at the board's meeting at the end of October, staff will bring forward for Goal 1 a more detailed action plan that shows how we'll go about addressing the priorities and the initiatives that are listed there. If you kindly flip the page over to Goal number 2. As you know, Mr. Chair, that the board is seeking to focus on collecting new data from staff and students around the culture survey. The current data set that we're looking at from 14-15 led the board to focus on increasing to at least half of the employees that they are responding, that they feel valued, and that they feel that we've addressed communication at a higher level. The priorities and initiatives there are, again, going deeper and spreading the commitments in the 18-19 year. And again, at the end of October, staff will bring forward the action plan that helps to unpack how we'll address those priorities and initiatives. And then the last two, Mr. Chair, at this high-level overview, we continue to want to focus on increasing our capacity of our students to take care of themselves and to deal with stress while they're at school. The 4 items that we're focusing on there is quite significant, although I wanted to flag one priority that we are going to drill down into in the 18-19 year is priority number 2 in goal number 3, which is to build common practices in classrooms that support the resiliency strategy that we are using to build that capacity with students of elementary age. Again, action report will be forthcoming at the end of October to describe how we'll attack those priorities and address those initiatives. And then lastly, Mr. Chair, goal number 4, we know that it's a priority for our board to connect with community stakeholders. We know they want us to continue to build stronger relationships and a genuine rapport with people who support the mission of public education. So at the end of October, staff will bring back that action plan that will also address how we're planning to attend to those 3 priorities listed on that page. So, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions, I'll turn it back over to you and see what trustees might be wondering about.
Certainly. Comments, questions? Well, thank you, Director, for that. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we're going to need a motion to move into... Hey? Pardon me? Oh, yes, Director, do you have any comments? Escaped that one. I had it in my head what I was going to say, too.
Mr. Chair, just 2 items just to note to the board, if I may. Many of you had received in your mailboxes the lapel pin for Orange Shirt Day, which is going to be on Monday, October 1. That, although it's usually at the end of September, the end of September is a weekend for us. So on Monday, October 1st, all of our schools will be engaging in the commemoration of Orange Shirt Day. It's a significant focus on learning for our students, which is tied into the board's commitment about truth and reconciliation. Orange Shirt Day is about a story about an Indigenous woman about 30 years ago who was sent by her family to attend a residential school. She was wearing her favorite shirt, which was the color orange. And when she arrived at the school, she had to give up that shirt to wear a uniform, and that was also symbolic for having to give up both her culture and her language as part of the residential school experience. So Orange Shirt Day is about commemorating and remembering survivors of the residential schools, to bring that difficult experience in Canadian history to the forefront in terms of discussing it as a teachable moment for our schools, and also reassure all of our trustees that the discussion about reconciliation doesn't rest exclusively with Orange Shirt Day. The revised social studies curriculum in Ontario, which we're planning some training sessions for our students, for our teachers, will also focus on reconciliation and residential school. And as well, Mr. Chair, we have our Truth and Reconciliation Days of Reflection in May, where we'll further drill down into that as a discussion for our students. Lastly, to build on your opening comments this evening about the difficult circumstances that our neighbors in Ottawa, Carleton, and Gatineau experienced as a result of the tornado, we've invited our schools to engage in the Tornado Challenge, and that is to tackle the tornado. One of the first schools that was to step up is North Grenville District High School, where they're donating the proceeds of their Friday football game to the Canadian Red Cross. So there's many different opportunities for people to help our neighbors, small and large. And I'm very proud of our schools on how they're stepping up in that way. Another school, Tugwa Secondary School, is engaged in raising donations for the food bank, which also the Ottawa Carleton region had indicated was a strong need at this time. So lots of good things that are happening where students have an opportunity to show their character and put their character traits into action.
Thank you, Director, and I'm glad to see that. You know, I think we live up here and we watch disasters happening around the world and we think that'll never happen to us. And when it happens that close, it frightens us all. It makes us realize that we're not invincible, that we are vulnerable, and things can happen. It's nice to see that community. It's really good to see the communities up there, how they're pulling together, and we certainly offer our support, and it's nice to see our students doing that. The only thing I want to talk about very briefly is the Ipsos survey. We, Trustee McDonald and myself, along with working with Stephen and Phil and staff, communicated with Ipsos that we had a good response, but we wanted more. So we extended it. And the way we did that is Ipsos had the capability of connecting with those people who had not yet done the survey and said that there was an extension of 1 more week. So I don't know the exact numbers right now, but I do know that it's much better than it was the first time we've done it. And I'm looking forward to the results because for anyone that's listening right now, we value the input. We really do. And we acted on it last time, and we need to see if our actions actually paid out. So please, if you have not done the survey, or if you started the survey and didn't finish it, go back and finish the thing so we have the information. Okay, thank you very much. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board move into Committee of the Whole September 26th at 9:55. Moved by Trustee McDonald, second by Trustee Cartner. Can I just get a show of hands? Thank you very much. The second motion is that the Committee of the Whole move into private session September 26, 2018. Again, a mover. Trustee McDonald, Trustee Armour, show of hands. Thank you very much. We're moving into private session. And just get that in your calendar.